Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Mr. Bill Morris today. He's out there in Oregon, and he's had some crazy encounters with Bigfoot over the year. But how's it going today, Bill?
Going great. Hotter than a firecracker outside, but not too bad inside.
I hear you. I'm there with you a little bit out here in Iowa, and we're a little bit humid, but I think you got us beat out here from what you said before the show started. But so, Bill, you sent, we'll start to get into it. You've sent me an email, and there's a lot that you've experienced over the years, and it's very interesting, the things that are going on in Oregon for you. But I would love to start first. Let's hear a little bit of your backstory. What is it that first got you interested in the Bigfoot phenomenon to begin with?
Well, as far as interest, I actually wasn't interested to begin with. I didn't really believe in the whole existence of the creature. I've heard my uncle talk about it. He was a logger here in the Roseburg area in Douglas County. But I've read, I think it was On the Track of Bigfoot. I think that was a Peter Byrne book when I was a kid, and I took it all with a grain of salt. And even after my first encounter, because my mind actually turned into something different because I couldn't hardly rationalize what I actually saw. But when I had my second encounter, which was face to face, I could reach out and touch it. That's how close we were. But that kind of changed things. And I just actually tried to bury it for most of my life, all the sightings that I'd had. And then I started looking. Once I was able to get it off my chest, it started with a Bigfoot and Brews over in Bend, where I met Ken Gerhard, Clint Barrickman, Mark Marcel, all the big names. Actually, Mark was the first one other than my mother that I ever talked to about my sighting.
Wow. And what year was that, Bill?
Oh, gosh.
Roundabout.
I think it was 28.
That is really cool that one of the first people that you talked to was Mark Marcel. What a nice guy. I've met him a few times. Such a good guy. He's
a fabulous guy. I had no idea who he was. We're standing out at the curb, and I said, well, yeah, I had this face-to-face, and that was the one I focused on because that's the one that terrified me the most. And I told Mark my story, and just by telling a stranger, because I had no clue who Mark Marcel was. I didn't know anything about 8 Canyon or any of the stuff going on there. And so we talked about that a little bit, and it was liberating, getting it off my shoulders. A secret that I kept inside me for 38 years. Yeah, and that was hard. Even my mother and I, she experienced 2 of my sightings with me, or at least experiences. One experience, one sighting. We never really talked about it much. I just buried it. Even my soulmate, who passed away 26 and a half, almost 27 years ago, I don't think I ever told her.
Wow.
And that's just been a really deep secret.
Bill, talk for a little bit about what it's like. How does it affect you when you've been holding on to something like that for so long and you're finally able to get it out there in the open? What does that do to you as a person? Why is it important for listeners to do that too?
Oh, I'm getting chills right now, actually, for even thinking about it. It was just absolutely liberating. It was just so much of a thing off my shoulders, because it was so traumatizing, especially my second encounter when I was face to face. I had no idea. My complete attitude towards the creatures is completely different now. It's 180 degrees. I have no fear of them. And that's probably why I'm able to spend time with them. But yeah, just being able to talk about it. And the more I talked about it, and that's part of the reason, it's taken you and I a year kind of to get to this point, is because I'm still was in that process of being able to talk about it. Because, it brings back some of the trauma, and it's just holding that in for so long is just, nobody needs to hold that in. You need to find somebody to talk to. And that was the reason I went over there, was to get this off my mind. And I never planned on being a researcher. That all just kind of happened because I was actually calling BS on somebody and their technique, and it actually worked the first time out.
Really?
Which was sighting number 5, which kind of blew my mind. And now he and I are just the best of friends. Matter of fact, I just spent a couple of days with him up in Enumclaw, Washington, and that would be Mr. Tom Cantrell.
Gotcha.
And actually, the first day I was out with Tom, I found prints.
Oh, wow. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
We had breakfast at a great little restaurant called Charlie's that they had there at Enumclaw. Best breakfast and lunches. And he's like, well, you want to go for a ride? I said, well, let's do it. So we hit it up. I don't know, I'm sure you know who Barb and Gabby was. Barb has a site up there, Barb Shoot. And we went up to where her campsite was. Matter of fact, she had a camp out there just a couple of days after we'd been there. And Tom was just showing me around, and he says, well, you know, he pulled up. There's a little spur road just off above the campsite. He says, go tell me what you see. So I walk out there, and I'm kind of looking around. And I look over to my right, and I see this nice arch tree that goes over the creek. But off on the left side, as I was facing it, you could see that it was weaved in the whole archway, and to hold the archway over this little creek. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Well, I got cooler stuff in my area, but that's okay. And I look to my left, and I see this freshly snapped tree. It was snapped about 4 feet up, and this thing was probably, I would say, 11 inches in diameter. Just a typical snap that they do. It almost looks like they're cut, but they're not. And I'm looking at that, and I'm looking around, and I look up, and I see just this big archway through the woods of what Bobo would call a Sasquatch highway. And I'm going, wow, cool spot. Nice. And I look down, and I find 3 prints, and they were all about 10 inches by about 3.5. So I figured they're probably juvenile. And I was not expecting to find that. And guess where my hydrocal is? At home, because I was on vacation. I wasn't expecting to go squatching. I'm like, Tom, I found 3 prints. Here, check out this picture. You see toes? He's like, oh, yeah.
That's wild. That's wild. And so was it, how far away were the, you know, being a juvenile print, how far were the prints away from each other? And just kind of curious about that.
Well, this one, it wasn't really walking. It was kind of staggered right there. So there's a big ravine that goes down and a little waterway that comes down. So it was kind of staggered. I think it was kind of looking for a spot to step down in the ravine and continue on to the other side. And so they were only, I would say one was probably about 20 inches from the other. Then the other one was fairly close, looked like it stood there and was just getting ready to step off over the side.
Interesting. It always happens on vacation. I'm almost scared to go on vacation next. Who knows what's going to happen? My
son and I, in April, he was coming down up from California for a wedding, and I took him out to my area, and we found a trackway.
Wow.
Probably 400 plus prints, at least, of my 4 clan members of the one that I study. And I left the lens cap on the camera when I was filming the trackway, and we were running out of time because we had a dinner to do. You know, it's always the last minute thing that just blows everything. You know, it's like, I said, I blew the whole trackway. Are you kidding me? You know, it's 72 degrees. They're melting down, you know, and it was as far as the eye could see. It was just, I just kicked myself all day. So the next morning we went up and refilmed it before we headed up to Eugene for a wedding at the Well Hall, one of his best friends. Though each time, we were pressed for time. So I couldn't really get the documentation in, and it just killed me because to blow that one was just, I just keep kicking myself over it.
It's a hard lesson to learn for sure. Like I haven't done anything like that, but we did not have an audio.
That's just me.
Yeah. I mean, I've had stuff happen and we didn't have the audio recorder going. And next time that'll never happen again. So I kind of get it, but a trackway is kind of a different animal. But Bill, take me back to the time when you first experienced something related to Bigfoot, and what was that first encounter like? What point in your life did that happen?
Well, for what I know now, I actually had a lot of different signs here and there throughout my life because I spend so much time in the woods. You know, I think I sometimes spend more time in the woods than I do in society. It's just my place to get my zen. Well, I was 16 years old, and with my first visual encounter. And I had a hard time getting people to go hunting. They would say, "Oh yeah, I'll be there. I'll see you at like 3:30 in the morning." And here comes 3:30. Here comes 4:30, 5:30. Right. I finally got tired of it and was like, you know what? If it's going to happen, I just got to do it for myself. So I lived on a ranch called the S Diamond Ranch in Myrtle Creek. It's a sheep ranch, a working sheep ranch. At the time, it was owned by Mike and Lavina Harwood. And they were good family friends. So Mike was an Air Force pilot. He also owned the airport in Tri-City, Oregon, which is an extension of Myrtle Creek. And he was teaching me to fly at the time. But right behind the trailer where we live, we were up on a little rise above the roadway. And they had just kind of cut the bank back and leveled things out to put this mobile home in there. And so just off the cut bank, I would climb up that and just go up over the hill because I had permission to hunt. And there's a little gate there, but they never completed a roadway through there. So I go through the gate onto the other side of the property. It's over 500 acres, the property. So it's basically 3/4 of a square mile. So plenty of room to hunt on. And I got through the gate, which is in the wooded area directly behind my place. And it's only maybe, I would say, 80 yards from the cut bank to where I could hit this little grassy road. The road is installed on the other side, but it was never really completed. It just stopped right there at the gate. And so I come through the gate. I get about, I would say, maybe 20 yards down from the gate, which is clear. I could see it from, if you were on the other side, you could see me at the top. And I saw some movement to my left. And I looked at it. And I'm carrying a old lever action Winchester 44 octagon barrel, just a beautiful piece of equipment. And I'm looking at this thing. I'm going, what the heck am I seeing? It kind of looked like a rabbit. And that's how my mind actually rationalized what I saw. A giant rabbit. Ken Gerhardt will tell you this. I said, Ken, you ever seen anybody say anything about a giant rabbit? Because it took years, actually. Only that memory just kind of unlocked for me about 1.5 years ago, because I had buried it so deeply, that I didn't want to rationalize what I actually saw was a Sasquatch. But it had its back legs tucked behind it, just like a rabbit sitting at rest, and with his arms down and tucked back in. And he was just down, hunkered down, trying to be invisible. But if it hadn't been for that little movement he made, I would have never seen him. I would have never noticed him, because when we're out hunting, we're looking for the ears. The deer, they always do this because the bugs. They can't help themselves. That's their dead giveaway. So it's real easy to find a deer that's laying down or kind of bedded down. You just look for that ear movement. But I stared at this thing. It was tricolored, which, I've had rabbits that were actually colored like this. So that's why my mind went to that. And it was black, dark brown, and red. And the brown and reddish was kind of splotches throughout its coat. And I stared at it for probably about 2 minutes. And then it took a dive into the woods, and I never heard a sound. I never heard it land. I never heard it exit the area or anything. It was just vanished. But what I remember is when it took that dive, it did like a Superman dive. I saw hands extended out in front of him. Like, well, rabbits don't have hands. So, my brain just completely just tucked that away. I never even told my mom that story, because I just didn't know what I saw. I just couldn't figure out. And my brain was going, nah, it was a rabbit. It was giant. No, giant rabbits don't exist. Well, this one did. So, that's where that one stood. And I just kind of stood there and kind of looked around. I walked over to where it dove into, and I never saw another sign of this thing, never heard another sound. So, and that was the end of that one. So I just kind of forgot about that one and went on with life.
I have at least one question. That is so fascinating. And I'm trying to put myself in my frame of mind of when I was 16, how I was thinking. I can't do it. So different, right? Okay.
I was very open-minded, and I still am. And I think that's maybe why they chose me to begin with, because I think they choose you. You don't just, things don't happen by happenstance. I think they feel that you're open-minded and that maybe we'll take a chance on this human.
Some people have talked to me saying that if you're in listeners, Be along for the ride. Here we go, guys.
We're going down the rabbit hole.
It's going to be fun. Sometimes when you are going to look for them, you may want to have a certain positive intention in your mind to make it clear to them that everything's okay and things of that nature, so that there's not a negative intention when you're going out to their area, because supposedly they can know before you even get there.
I think they can read your mind like an open book. They can read you very clear. And that's the experiences I'm having now, is that you can't hide anything from them. And if you're out there with any kind of ill intentions, you'll never see one. Banging on trees, call blasting, that just makes me laugh. First of all, you don't know what you're broadcasting when you're call blasting some other Sasquatch's call. They could be saying, get over here, I'm going to whoop your booty. You just don't know. I don't want nothing to do with that. I don't want some raging Sasquatch coming at me ready to kill me, because if they wanted to, it would not be a problem. It's the size of them that's really scary. And most people's encounters, they're terrified because, we grew up in a society where there's monsters. I grew up with, all these, you see the In Search Ofs and everything else, and, grew up with that, good old Leonard Nimoy. I love those. I love the horror things. I love all types of horror movies. I used to watch stuff. I couldn't wait to get home so I could watch a horror show of some sort. But, we have that in our mind, and they just look scary, but they're actually quite gentle, I found out. And I had to change my mindset because I was actually listening to a podcast one day, and somebody made the statement was, they never tried to hurt me. And that stuck in my mind just solid. And I got to thinking about that, and I dwelled on that for months. And you know what? Even when I was face to face, he was never aggressive one way in any way, shape, or form. And every encounter I had was not aggressive. Matter of fact, my fourth encounter, I felt it was telling me goodbye for now, because it was leaving, and I didn't have another encounter for, over 30 years. So, because I wasn't ready. I think they were actually waiting till I was ready.
That's very interesting. And I think there's something to be said of that, just in the fact that when we're going through life, there's certain time periods in our lives when we might be focused on certain things and definitely not be being able to see the weird stuff that's happening in life. But there's some other points where you get to be, you're taking things a little bit more easy. You're not rushing. You're noticing things in nature. You're going out in nature to begin with.
Love nature.
And then you start to see, and most of your sightings, you said in your email, happen around a certain area. Now, I'll leave it up to you if I don't know if what you shared in that email was public, but is that anything that you can share for context wise, or?
Oh, absolutely. I can get right into the second sighting if
all
you
right,
like.
Cool.
They all happened. Well, I lived in Myrtle Creek. Like I said, I was on the S Diamond Ranch, which was 3.5 miles from town. The ranch was, and where they started the mileage markers at an area called the Y. It's where South Myrtle, you come down through town past the schools and go straight on out. That becomes South Myrtle. And you take a left, and that brings you on to North Myrtle. And I think the mile marker starts there rather than any place else. And there was a market there called the Super Y Market. So that's, pretty much where the Y came from, I would imagine. I don't know the full story on it. It doesn't exist any longer. So that's the unfortunate part. I knew the owners of it very well, grew up with them, and went to all the schools there. So we'll just say this was in either the last week of May or the first week of June, which is my sighting number 2. My mom and I had gotten in a bit of an argument. I was a teenager. I was 17. I had just turned 17 that March. And this was after my first sighting when I was 16. And this is 1981. And so to cool off, I walked to town. I walked everywhere. I had 14 cars. I owned 14 cars at that point in time. I used to buy, sell, fix them up, sell them. It helped the family out with money. And plus that's all at the time was under the table money. So it didn't affect anything my mom had going on. And so I walked to town. I ended up at some old apartments we used to live in called Clearwater Manor. They're on Johnson Street in Myrtle Creek. and I was visiting some friends there. And actually, it was actually approached by a skunk that evening out there, and I was actually trying to coax it in to pet it. That's how I am with nature. I mean, I've petted wild deer, elk in the field because I understand the prey and the mentality of them, and how they act and how they interact, especially when I've trained dogs, horses, sheep, llamas, cows. I've done all kinds of interesting things. People have called me, "Hey, Bill, you want to teach my animal to do this?" Let me get back to you. Yeah, I'll do it. Let me give it a try. What the heck? It's a new experience. But anyways, I was talking to friends there, which the creek runs right behind the place. North Myrtle Creek does. Actually, I think it's just Myrtle Creek because I think by then both creeks have already come together at a different point. And it's about 11 o'clock at night. They're all ready to go to bed. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to head for home. I'm all calm now. I'm, it's amazing what a walk does for you. But there's a little bridge right there that crosses the creek. And I crossed over that bridge, and the first strangeness started then. I heard like something was in the water walking underneath the bridge. You get, as you're moving your legs through, you get that air pocket behind your legs, and it gives a cavitation sound. And I heard that. I'm like, boy, that's very strange. Who in the heck would be in the creek in the middle of the night? And I smelled something I've never smelled before. It was like a combination, and I've heard other people describe it the exact same way, which was like wet dog, a skunk smell, but not quite a skunk. It was different than a skunk, but in that same type of category, and rotted meat or rotted flesh of some sort, just a combination all in one. And I was like, boy, somebody needs to take out the garbage because this stuff is pretty bad. So I'm like, I just kind of shrugged it off and kept walking. I have to go down the street, hang a left, and come back up, and that's where you hit the super wide. But you have to cross the creek on another bridge. And the same sound when I crossed that spot, and the same smell. And there was a little trail that ran up behind the market, which was kind of a shortcut, comes behind the store. Then I can get across the parking lot, saves me from, because when you get up the Y, there's really no place to walk. You end up getting run over if you're not careful. So I took the shortcut up and over and just started headed for home. And I was calm now, a better frame of mind. So I'm walking. I get up just past the 1 mile post. And the worst part of this is my last wife that I was married to, where we lived, you could look right at the 1 mile post. So that brought a lot of it back. But I got over it. I was fine with it by that point. And I just passed that, and I heard 4, and not only just heard them, but felt them. There's a 3-foot difference between where the road was and where this was walking. And I heard 4 footsteps. And I heard them and felt them. They were very loud and very powerful steps. I thought, oh, maybe somebody's horse or cow got loose. And on the 4th step, I looked to my right, and it was right there. I could reach out and touch it without even straightening my arm all the way as far as full extension goes. And all I could see is, and this is what I tell people, their eyes are self-illuminating. Matter of fact, we just brought Todd Neese onto our side because somebody else demonstrated to him that in the dark, first of all, they call Sasquatches out every day. They called them out every day to him for 5 days to prove it to him. Blew his mind. Then the eye glow. Everybody calls it an eye shine, but when there's no light around and it's completely dark and they're illuminated in the dark, that would make them self-illuminating. And this Sasquatch eyes were green. And the biggest thing that about stopped my heart, and it hit me like I understood the phrase a bolt of fear, because it was instant. I could not move. But it was, the eyes were, almost twice as wide as mine. And I'm like, what is this thing? And they were glowing green. And it was a really cool color of green, too, by the way. And I just stood there and stared. I could not move. I do remember running through my head the phrase, "Feet don't fail me now." And then I was a little upset at my feet because they did not work. Nothing worked. I could not move. We stared at each other face to face. I could see, everybody says, got the conical head, and this one's not quite as conical. It had a little bit of rise to the top of the head, but not like, some are. And I could just see the outline. It was very dark. I could see the shoulders, which really terrified me. This thing was 4 feet wide and just thick and burly. And I'm just focused on the eyes and just staring at each other. And I could not move. I tried. and nothing worked. I was just frozen. I think people are calling that zapped of some sort. And then after about 2 minutes, it just turned and walked away. And it took 3 steps, and I never heard, just like the first one, never heard another sound, not another noise, nothing. I probably stood there for another 2 or 3 minutes because I was just, my mind was like, what just happened? That was a Sasquatch, and there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're not supposed to exist. So I'm focused on that spot where it was. I start walking backwards back towards town, and then jogging backwards, then turned, and I probably did that mile. I swear it was in 30 seconds. It was fast. I never run so fast in my life. And I got up to the store there, the Super Y, and put myself dead center. It kind of had a lower brick wall around the thing, and I just felt a little safer there, and I was just cowering like a scared little child. And there was a payphone right there. And I didn't have any change, but we used to click on the receiver part, and that was kind of a signal at home. If you didn't have any money, and you got that call, but there was nothing there, and you heard the clicks, that something's going on. Well, there was only 2 payphones in town. One was downtown, and one was right there. So it was real easy to find me. My mom come flying into town, turned around, and I jumped in the car and said, "Drive now, go!" And she looked at me, and she's like, if anybody asked what I looked like when this happened, she said Bill was white. And she said, Bill's not white, because my dad was Native American, so I'm olive complected skin, and I was just white as a sheet. And when we got close to that point, I'm just telling her to where the sighting was. I said, floor it. She says, well, you gonna tell me what's going on? I said, I just saw a Bigfoot. I said, I was so terrified because it was just out of the blue, unexpected. Of course, they're always unexpected. It's not a planned event. And it took me days to just calm myself after that, because it just blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. I didn't believe in them, even after the sighting I had before. But that was a giant rabbit, remember? I didn't associate it. I still didn't associate it as being a Sasquatch. All these years, until about a year and a half ago, is when that memory finally unlocked the rest of the way. And I went, whoa, wait a minute. This has been going on before that sighting. So, but yeah, it was something else, I'll tell you.
So I was going to ask you, so your first sighting was age 16, then you had a year and a half until this.
No, actually it was only months.
Sorry.
Yeah,
only a month. Okay.
It started in October 1981, which was the hunting season. So I knew that event, and that's when I was hunting solo. And then the next one was May of the next year. So it was only like 7 or 8 months later, or 9 months, however many months it was. So
the second one hits you. And did you experience anything like infrasound when you were that close to that creature the second time? I mean, like,
the only thing I could say is I couldn't move. No matter what I tried to do, I could not move. I was absolutely frozen in place. And like I said, I told my feet, don't fail me now. I'm like, Dad, you ain't working, you ain't listening. I wanted them to work so bad, but they wouldn't. I couldn't do anything. I could not move an inch. I was just frozen.
I want to point out, so I do have a few younger listeners, and you want to point out that the thing that you said about the payphone. So you got to remember, guys, in the early 80s, we didn't have cell phones on us all the time. And you had this like telephone in the middle of town on a pole, and you had to use quarters to make, or dimes or whatever, to make a phone call.
And it was rotary.
2 of those. It's rotary. So you like clicking it a few times, and that was your code to your mom. That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's some Stranger Things stuff. Yeah, if you ever seen that.
Because they could hear that click in the background. So it was like, oh, ding, ding. Okay, I'm needed. So what was cool is there's only 2 in town. So it was pretty easy to find.
So smart. You mentioned another thing that it kind of set off a bell in my head. You mentioned your father was Native American. Mm-hmm. Do you think having that relation plays into this at all? Or you said how you're really connected to nature, connected to animals. Have you ever thought of that before?
I think it's more of the open-mindedness and me being connected to nature and being very observant when I'm out there. Because I'm kind of and I can tell you at the time when I had my face-to-face with him, I was bodybuilding. I was a big dude. I'm still a big dude. I'm 59 years old, and, I'm not a little guy. I'm 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
At the time when I had this sighting, I had a 54-inch chest, a 32-inch waist, 21-inch arms, 22-inch neck. I was the same dimensions as Arnold Schwarzenegger. I just wasn't cut as well as he was. And this thing, and when I told them this when I was on Pork and Beans, I said, it made me feel like Billy Barty. I know these kids don't know who Billy Barty is. He was a dwarf. God, I think Billy was only like 3'9", somewhere around there. He's a very small man. And that's what this thing made me feel like when I was standing next to it. It was like the Empire State Building versus an apartment building. It was quite a size difference. Made me feel very small and very insignificant. But I think mostly it's probably my open-mindedness and my connection to nature. Because I've always been connected to nature, even though you look at me, oh, you're a manly man, you're a tough guy. Well, yeah, but you don't know this side of me. And it's not a side that I ever really let people know about. Only a few people know that, I'm that connected. I get there. I'm listening for the birds. I listen to the wind. I appreciate the beauty of nature. I love to take pictures of flowers, rainbows, all that stuff. It's something that you would look at me and go, well, that's pretty unexpected. I mean, you can look through my pictures on Facebook and go, this guy's kind of interesting.
So then at that point in your life, you've had the second encounter. What are your thoughts towards this creature you've been experiencing? Are you fully on board with, okay, Sasquatch is real? Although you did say it was later in life when you totally realized all this stuff.
No, as far as being real, the face-to-face, that absolutely solidified it.
All right.
That this is not a mythical creature. It's real. It's flesh. It's blood. It breathes, and it's big, absolutely colossal in size. It's just then my fourth or third sighting. For me, I sighted it, but my mother didn't, and I think she experienced the infrasound. And believe it or not, just a few months ago, this is the first time she told me that she could not move the entire night.
Oh, wow.
That she was paralyzed. And what happened was I felt it watching, and so did she. We were different ends of the trailer, so we're 50 feet apart. She had the master bedroom all the way the other side. I actually took a living room. It's actually a family room. It was huge. I had piano in there because I was in a band and everything. We used to have them come over and practice. Everybody in the valley loved it because the sound would echo up the valley there. When we get compliments the next day, he goes, "Hey, you guys sounded great last night." It's like, oh, you heard that? Oh, yeah, it echoes all the way up the valley. I'm like, well, that's cool. But had that feeling, and this was the first time I actually had that feeling where the hair stand up on the back of your neck and you just feel like something's just watching you. Something unseen is watching you. So I went to my back window, which faces the bank, the cut bank behind from the area where I had my first sighting. And I actually looked out the window, and the first tree there, it was squatted down next to the first tree. I saw the glowing eyes, and I closed the curtains, crawled in bed, jumped in. I was in the fetal position the entire night, and it stayed there the entire night. And the next morning when my mom got up, I heard her headed towards, when this feeling finally disappeared was probably about 5:30 in the morning. So this is the entire night it sat there and watched, and just right there behind my window, which was only 30 feet away. The first sighting I had, distance-wise from it, I was only about 30 to 35 feet away. Then the sighting number 2, I was 2 feet away. So this sighting, I was about 30, 35 feet away. I would say 30. It was closer to 30. And so as soon as I heard her get up, I ran into the kitchen. I'm like, trying to be cool. Did you sleep good? She said, I didn't sleep a wink. I went, oh, okay, I'm not the only one. What's up? She says, I just felt something just staring at us all night long. I just couldn't sleep. She says, I couldn't move, is what she told me just recently. So there comes the infrasound, of being what they call zapped or whatever you want to call it. But she said she was absolutely paralyzed the entire night. And as soon as it went away, that's when she got up and headed for the kitchen, because she didn't have any understanding of it. Then I told her what went on that night. I said, I looked out the window. I saw him back there. I saw those glowing eyes, and I just freaked out, climbed in bed, and just curled up and don't eat us, don't kill us. I mean, I had no idea, that it was a gentle being. It just looked scary, but I was terrified. And this was only about a week and a half after the face-to-face. So that was still fresh in mind, but it's still, again, it never tried to hurt us, never tried to do anything. It may have even thrown things at the thing. I just don't remember, as far as that part goes, because I was just curled up in bed like a little baby, open for my mommy. This big old guy, built like Schwarzenegger, acting like a 1-year-old infant.
I almost wonder, you said it happened so close to the last one.
Yeah, I would have to say maybe 30 yards. But the first
time frame wise, do you think it maybe followed you home or was tracking you? Or
knew right where I lived. And matter of fact, I think it has something to the way I'm looking at things now with the research and stuff I've been doing. The feeling I have is when one connects with you, you're on their network, and that they all know who you are. I don't know if it's your vibration or, what it has to do with you, but I think when one knows you and connects with you, they all know you. And that's what I'm kind of learning, because I'm getting contact pretty much wherever I go, and I'm testing this out here and there. I was up with Thomas Potter at his research site, which is up close to Crater Lake here, just about 6 or 8 weeks ago. And they were actually coming into camp there. We had one approach us. We were chatting at campfire and heard things coming at us, walking towards us, and it absolutely sounded bipedal. And he still has a modicum of fear. Until you lose that fear, you're not going to be able to have a visual sighting with them. I believe that is part of it, is your fear. They want to make sure they know you're open-minded, but it's that little bit of fear. Even if you have a small amount of it, they will just kind of stay what they call, I guess, cloaked, or they're going to just stay just out of your view. And I think the reason they do, and it's not a wood knock. We all call it wood knocks. It sounds like a wood knock, but it's actually, and it's been witnessed, it's done with their mouth. It's a pop. Their throat kind of swells up and they get this just powerful pop. And I mean, it's very powerful and very loud. And it does sound like somebody's whacking on a tree, but they're doing a pop.
Do you know someone who has actually witnessed that?
I've been told about it, and other people that have actually seen somebody that has witnessed it. And I can't exactly tell you who. I didn't write things down. I was just like, oh, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
That absolutely kind of makes sense, because they're an incredible creature. They really are. But I think, like I said, once you're on their radar and they get a connection with you, they all know you. They all know you, and they'll come out. I'm actually teaching one of the guys I work with, and he's actually took what I told him, and he was up at a local lake here, and he went up and he heard the wood knocks. He said, it sounded like somebody was chopping on wood. I knew what that was because you told me about it. And this guy's really calm and chill like I am, and, very open-minded, Spanish guy from Mexico. And so he says, okay. He walks up there and he says, hey, hollers out, I know who you are. It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you. It'd be really neat to see you step out. And this big white Sasquatch stepped out for him to present itself to him on his first time of trying this. So, it absolutely works. It's your mindset. And they, like I said, they can read you like an open book if you're ready or not. And it's not like these chance sightings of a road crossing or anything else. This is a true connection. I think if you spend more than a couple minutes in their presence and you're open-minded, they form that connection with you. And it was Tom Cantrell doing an interview on Pork and Beans that he had said one day that they form a mental connection with you, and it lasts for a long time. And I got to thinking about that, and that's what got me to my sighting number 5 and started me as a researcher. But we can get on to my fourth one.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, my fourth one, which was with my mom as well. We were there at the mobile. There's a nice driveway. You go up the hill, and I had cars parked all along the hill because, like I said, I had a bunch of cars. I had them stashed everywhere, and I would just fix them up, buy and sell, But we're out talking. It was, and this was only about a week after the last one, the third one. And we're standing on top of the driveway. There's actually a street light there that illuminates everything, but it wasn't on or anything. It was the sun had just gone down from the hill, so it was very light out still. And we're talking, and she says, "Look at that." And we're looking at the property across the road, a big pasture, but at the edge of the pasture, there's a tree line, which continues on from the property I'm on, because there's a big pasture on the other side there where I had the first sighting. And there was a family that lived there that was related to the folks that own the ranch. And that was just another house on the property. They had like 5 houses on the property. But at the end of the property, the tree line starts and comes across the road and all the way around this person's pasture, across the creek, and up the mountain on the other side. And my mom said, "Well, look at that." And I look over and we see the eyes again, just inside the tree line, and it's moving. And the way they move is it's really hard to explain. It's just a glide, like they're floating. I mean, it's just so perfect. There's no head bob, there's no nothing. And they're walking through stuff that you don't want to walk through, because there's so much deadfall and windfall, through these areas. And, because it's not like anybody's going through there clearing everything out. They just usually, at the end of their pastures, they just deal with their pastures and leave the tree lines and stuff alone. And to see this thing gliding, and the eyes are looking directly at us. And I think my mom spotted it first. And this is right at the beginning, right as soon as we could see, something as far as into our field of vision. And we watched it walk through the tree line and just basically glide through the tree line, let's put it that way. And he just kept looking back at us probably about every 5 or 6 steps. And it was moving, and it's just walking. It's moving faster than I could run. And every 5 or 6 steps, all the way crossing the creek, then we'd see it start to head up the mountain. And it looked at us all the way, every 5 or 6 steps, just looking directly at us. And until it got over the top and vanished over the top of the mountain. And the feeling that I got at the time was goodbye. It was telling me goodbye. I don't know where the feeling was from, but it was and at that time, it just calmed me from all the sightings I'd had. I didn't have that terror anymore or anything. I was accepting what was happening, but apparently not accepting enough, because it was bailing on me. Nothing else happened for another almost 41 years is when I decided that, I'm not afraid anymore. I don't have any fear. I finally got to get all this off my chest. Otherwise, I wanted nothing to do with Sasquatch whatsoever. Nothing. I don't care. I wanted nothing to do with it. Then my curiosity started kicking up, and, because that's part of being open-minded, is being very curious. And I want to know how, my whole life, I like to tear things apart and put them back together. It's like, I want to know what makes this tick. Why does this work this way? How did they figure this out? And after getting all that off my chest, I started collecting books and reading. I probably have over here probably close to 100 books. And I've got from all the 4 horsemen. I've got everybody that's top name. I've made friends with almost everybody. Unfortunately, Pete Burns is not doing too well. Probably won't be with us for very much longer.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I think he's 98.
Yeah.
So he's outlived them all. They all didn't like him because he was the foreigner, but he's outlived every one of them. I think that's hilarious. And the hard part is that not one of them ever saw a Sasquatch. They are the pioneers, and not one of them ever got to see a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
And that's what got me thinking. A lot of these little things, when you chase something, what happens? It runs faster and further away. I watched 10 years of Finding Bigfoot. I love you, Cliff Barrickman and Bobo, but banging on trees every time you guys did it, and they did their little mouth pop, each time they answered you, it was further and further away. They were going the opposite direction. I think Sasquatches have a sense of humor, and they were answering them just to humor them, and they're on their way out. You're never going to find one doing those things. They have to come to you. And that's where what we call, I think Tom coined this phrase, is armchair squatching, where you find a place, if you do have a connection, which means you've probably had a sighting for more than a minute or two. They've done a connection to you mentally. They know who you are. And You just get out there and let them know you're there. I get out in the woods. If you came across me in the woods were spying on me, you'd think I was nuts. I'm out there talking out loud to everything, giving my thoughts and say, hey, every time I get up to my area, hey, Bill's here, which this will get into story number 6 with Bill. Bill's here. But by doing all the reading I'm doing, and because I'm very logical and very good at reasoning, and looking at how others were doing all these things, I was like, you know what? This doesn't work. None of this works. You guys are not finding what you're hunting for because the things that you're doing and the techniques you're using do not work. So all these people that are going out doing all these things, especially like Moneymaker and stuff, they're still out there banging on trees, call blasting. And you know what? The only experiences they're getting is maybe a tree knockback, or maybe they'll get a vocalization. And that's about it. They're not getting face-to-face views of these magnificent forest people. I think they're just beautiful, absolutely beautiful creatures, and to be so big and be able to be as stealthy as they are, man, they've got some kind of intelligence. And the more time you spend with them, the stranger things get. I was telling Jill Redensmeyer, they did a Flash of Beauty. I said, Jill, I call this quote unquote high strangeness. Happens around him. She writes me back. She says, yeah, Bill, guess what? You're going to like the new movie. She says, it's right up your alley. I said, well, it's not really my alley. It's just what I'm finding out. There's the more time you spend with these creatures, the weirder things get, because I think they open up to you more and let you see more the more time you're with them or spend around them. And what do they call it? We're the woo camp. And what Jill and Brett are doing now with the new movie, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's probably what I've seen. It's 90% complete. They still have some stuff they want to add in. And they're trying to bridge the gap between the apers, because everybody thinks it's just like Cliff. He's still stuck on it's a stupid ape. Sorry, Cliff, but you couldn't be more wrong. It's not a stupid ape. I think they're more part of us than anything. They look like us. A lot of them do. You're going to get different looks. They're just like us. You've got different looks, different shapes, different body sizes. When it comes to the footprints, look at the Grays Harbor footprints that they're so famed. Oh, sure. It doesn't have the mid-tarsal break. It has a longitudinal break or longitudinal arch. Really look at it. Cliff will come up with a different reason and excuse to try to veer it off to something else. I'm like, no, it's right there. Look at it. There's no mid-tarsal break in that one. Some have mid-tarsal breaks. Some are longitudinal, just similar to ours. It's the size that tells the difference. You can't you can't hide that square inches of footage, to their feet. They're just big. Even the small ones have a very disproportionate foot compared to ours. So
that's very interesting. Yeah, I'm going to have to take a closer look at the Grays Harbor footprint for sure.
Take a really close look at it and go, man, I really don't see the mid-tarsal here. This looks more like a human foot, but it's huge. It's a beautiful print.
Before we get too far away from part of the conversation we just had, so you're saying that when you go to an area, you have to verbally say out loud, like, hey, Bill's here or something like that. And that's how you're going to get that face-to-face connection, potentially.
Not necessarily. They know you're coming. They know your thoughts before you even leave your home. If you are connected to them, I'm constantly connected to them. I don't know how it works. Don't ask me. I just go with it. And that's what Tom has taught me. He's like, I've called him several times, Tom, really questioning my sanity. Some of the craziest things were happening around me. And he's like, just go with it. It's okay. It's okay. Just go with it. Weird things are going to happen. Just go with it. You'll understand it some other time. Just go with it. I'm like, okay, you're really sure I'm not going nuts? And I'm sure most of us feel that way with some of the strangeness that we see, especially people that are seeing them cloak. Barb Shoup actually got it on film. And there's been a couple people that actually got it on film. And it's kind of like a predator effect, and very interesting. And now it was in the Flash of Beauty. This will be in the new one, the Paranormal. And it's actual video footage of a cloaked Sasquatch.
Really?
Yes, coolest thing you ever saw. And they're making, like I said, they're trying to bridge the camps together and go, hey, they are a flesh and blood being, but they also have other things. And I think it's just things that we actually used to have at one point in time before we domesticated ourselves and started changing our environment to suit ourselves. They took it a whole different level and changed themselves to suit the environment.
Very interesting. I think there's something definitely that was said there. It's like, as we become more and more civilized and we latch on to technology, and in the future that'll become even more so, and maybe it becomes part of us. What are we losing in our connection to nature? That there's a lot of different pathways you could go.
We've lost a lot. Look at people that have these psychic abilities and telekinesis and telepathic. I mean, I've experienced in my life being telepathic and being able to read the minds of people close to me, and it still happens to me. Even though my ex and I, we still live in the same house, but we're not together anymore and haven't been for a year and a half. But I will think of something that I'm hungry for. I'll come home and that's what she's made for dinner. And it happens more often than not, because we have a connection. We're close together. We've been, close together for over 12 years. So you develop a mental connection. And just like people dreaming in the same bed together, science is actually coming up with where they are actually mentally connected and in the same state. And science has really proven a lot of things. And that's another thing that they're trying to bridge the gap on, is show the science of things. Even Todd Neiss is looking at the eye glow and how they do it. There is actual scientific precedent for it, for some other animals that are able to do that, especially deep sea creatures. How they're able to illuminate in that dark water. Bioluminescence, there's another avenue of showing, that things can light up on their own. It's all in your chemistry. And as far as telepathic, I had a lot of abilities growing up that I suppressed because I didn't want nothing to have to do with it. It scared me. I wasn't able to handle it. I think Sasquatch figured out the same thing. I ain't ready yet. But some of that's starting to come back for me now. And I think they're kind of opening up some of that in me. It's become not from wanting to prove their existence, because I already know they're there. I know it's flesh and blood. I've been face to face. I've been two times within 35 feet, 35 feet or less, 2 feet or less. My last one, they allowed me to get within 10 feet. And then the one I would say that we walked through the tree line up the mountain the other side was within a quarter mile or less. So I've had a lot of close contact. And most of my stuff has been daylight. Everybody goes out at nighttime. I'm like, why? You can see a lot better in the daytime. So I don't go out at night. I do camp out in the areas sometimes, which I may do here in the next couple of days. And I'm going to try to do more and more of that. All my camping gear, I figure, it's in the van. It's going to stay in the van. And, when I get the inkling to do it, I will just spend the night out there. And I haven't had any nighttime activity with them. All mine's been in the daytime.
You had mentioned earlier, we were talking, it kind of got referred to quickly. We were talking about Todd Neiss and for calling Sasquatch out for 5 nights in a row, and that convinced him of some things. So can you go into a little bit more what exactly was done when you were calling Sasquatch out, and were you able to have the creature come to the area, I guess? What was done there?
This will run us into number 5.
All right.
Okay. Well, I watched a podcast, and I think it was in like February of 2020 that Tom Cantrell was on. Tom said one thing, and that's where it got me into the connection thing. Because a lot of people think Tom's full of hooey, he's just nuts. But you know what? I can lend credence to the experiences he had, because I've tested it. I was actually calling him out on it, is what I was going to do. He had made the statement of being connected to them. He says, once you form a connection with them, you're pretty much connected for a very long time, if not for life. And I thought about that, and I thought hard about it, just like I did with, they never tried to harm me. I'm OCD. So when I stick on something, my mind plays it and plays it and plays it. Songs, all that stuff, it just runs over my head and just continues. I'm like, stop. I wish I had a switch here to turn things off, so I could get some rest, because I don't rest much, to tell you the truth. But I was like, okay. Everybody's like, Tom's full of crap and everything. But I'm like, I don't think so. I mean, I'm looking at the things that he's put and the things that he's written and going, you know what? It makes more sense to me because like I said, I've trained a lot of animals and understanding the mindset of both prey and predator. So I really kind of analyzed the things that he had written and Arla Williams had written. And I think Arla taught Tom a lot as well. But he made that statement that they're connected to you. So I'm like, oh, okay. At the time, I was a caregiver. I was working as a medical aide and a caregiver for 14 years. So in the medical industry, until the shot came around, it's like, nobody's forcing me to do anything against my will. So thank you, Governor. She fired me. I worked up to my last day until she said everybody's fired at that point. Good old Kate Brown at the time, which, there should be able to be some lawsuits over that. Because an executive order is not a law.
That was a whole different. It was a crazy time, wasn't it? Yeah.
It is a hard suggestion. We'll just call it that way. So I decided, okay, 7 days. I am going to focus on the sightings I had, especially face to face. And the one I was face to face with, because he seemed to be the one that was really trying to connect with me the most. Because the first sighting I had, I've never seen that Sasquatch again. The rest of them were this alpha male. And now I call him Silver. He is black as a shadow could be. Just like a void, a hole. That's how black they are. Or at least he is. And so I focused on him. I focused on the sightings that I had. Then I focused on where I wanted to meet them. The place where I go up there, and that's where my research area is, I've been going there for over 40 years. I've hunted every inch of that mountain. I know every deer trail, everything. I know where every mushroom is. I know where every medicinal plant is on that mountain. I know the trees personally. I've probably given a couple of them a name. I go up there shooting. I used to take friends up there shooting all the time, camping. I have a camp spot up there that is just absolutely drop dead gorgeous. It's surrounded. It's with the old growth timber. And it's just this nice little open prairie spot. And the only way you can find it is to know where it is, because you drive right past it and go, oh, that's a cool spot there. That'd make a great camp. There's actually a road that goes to it. It just dives up, but you have to dive off the bank and you hit the road. You have to know where it's at or you're not going there. And so I spent every waking moment of that week picturing my sightings, that one particular Sasquatch, and letting you know I want to meet you, just to try to prove, or disprove actually the mental connection. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to call BS on you. Let's find out. So I'm going to experiment with this. Well, in the meantime, towards the end of that week, Kip Morrell and Miriam were over in Brookings. And
can I clarify something?
Go ahead.
This is just was it Kip Morrell? Same guy. Okay. Sorry. So pronunciation. All right. Just double checking. Okay.
Well, yeah. Well, him and I have had this thing over the past year where I was like, he's the elusive Kip creature. And, that I've seen more Sasquatches, and I've seen 8 Sasquatches and 0 Kip, and I've done this thing on his Facebook for close to a year. We finally got to meet at Beachfoot. It was just hilarious.
He's a fun guy.
Just like the day before Beachfoot, I'd put up my algorithms have to be correct. My hands are itchy. You know what that means? That means jackpot. I'm going to run into this creature, So I put all these things up on his thing. And we finally met and we're peeking around corners, going, oh. I think I spotted him.
Sorry to distract you, but I just had to make sure it's the right guy I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah, so, he's funny. But anyways, I was going to go over there and actually meet him instead of go squatching. And he's like, well, Bill, I'll catch up with you in the summer when I'm over there, because he's got some things he does at the airport here for his fire training and stuff. And even though he's retired, he still does this thing every summer with the crew over here. And I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll go squatching. I'll go give this a try. So it's actually because it kept turning me down because he had company coming and had plans for the day that I actually had my sighting. Thanks, Kip. Wow. I think I told Kip this. I'm not sure if I did, but if he's watching, he knows now. But I put all this into action. And this is the first time I ever, and I didn't even know about what they call mind speak, which is just telepathy. It's nothing more, nothing less. It's just a telepathic way of communication. And on my way out there, I was getting ready to turn onto the highway, which makes it about another 15, 16 miles to where I was headed. And I hear this in my head: we're not going to meet you where you wanted to meet. I'm driving. I'm going, what was that? I'm like, okay, Bill, go with it. So I just kind of dismissed what popped into my head. I'm like, that was very strange. Okay. Because I've been able to hear other people's thoughts, but I've never had them implanted into me like that. So that was a bit of strangeness. And that's when I started seeking out things about mind speak. And Robin McRae and her had chatted about it and stuff. And I was like, and also Greg Roberts from right here in Medford. He's our weather guy. He owns rogueweather.com. And he's also a researcher. And he's experienced things in the same manner I have. And the way things have been put into our minds. Sometimes it's a sentence, sometimes it's a paragraph, sometimes it's a spoken word, sometimes it's a thought or feeling. And it's just a very strange thing. And we just learn to kind of go with it. So I'm on my way up there. I make my turn. I'm headed up the main highway, and I get to my turn off, and I turn off, and there's a guy parked there. And I'm like, well, are you lost? He's like, no. He says, I'm up from California. I just moved here recently. And so we had a big conversation there. He was looking for a place to ride his quads. And I said, well, yeah, you got a cool area. Just please stay on the road. Don't go off-road trashing, the environment here and everything. Right. I said, there's old logging roads, but you can go up them. But, don't be during burnouts and cookies and spinning your tires on them, But they are hard pan because they are gravels. It's just they're overgrown. And they make great highways there. That's where I go for a lot of my walks. I'll just pick a logging road and an old one that's overgrown, and off I go because I know it's great footing. And it doesn't matter where you are up there. If the footing is great anyways. It's decomposed granite. So as far as getting a footprint, good luck. It's almost impossible up there. That's why I got so excited about the snow track that I screwed up. But I talked to him, and I decided, okay, I'm going to drive on up. And there's this area I call the Triangle Marsh. And I made it past that, and then I hit a 3-foot bank of snow on the roadway. And if there's 3 feet at this point, it's probably, I would say, about 4,100 foot level, maybe 4,200 feet right there. And it goes all the way up to about 5,200 feet. So you figure at the top, there's probably 16, 17, 18 feet of snow.
Wow.
So I wasn't going any further. And the place that I wanted to meet him was up towards the top, so there was no way that was going to happen. So then I remembered that little statement that came into my mind when I turned as, we're not going to meet you where we want to meet you. So I turned around, come back down, and I parked there at the what I call the Triangle Marsh because it's shaped like a triangle. And by then, the other gentleman that I'd been talking to showed up there. And so we talked. I said, you're not going to go any further. I said, there's a wall of snow and you're not getting past it, especially he had some little car. And so we chatted for another half an hour. Really nice guy. Really enjoyed our conversations. And then some guy, while we were standing there talking, come up in this big old 4-wheel drive pickup, just flying by us. I'm like, we're both laughing. You ain't going to make it very far. It wasn't 2 minutes. He's coming back down. He was out of there. And so we finished our conversation. He took off, and it was really quiet. And I was going to try one of Tom's methods of armchair squatching. So I had brought the book that I'm in, which is Sasquatch Face to Face by Tom Cantrell. We all wrote our own stories that are in there. So plus he put some of his own stories in there. And so I figured, well, that was a good time for me to finish reading. I went down into the woods to where I could get a nice view of the marsh area there and everything, because the snow had beaten everything down. Normally there's cattails and marsh grasses and milkweed, milk thistle that's, 5 feet tall through there, and you can't hardly see down through there. And matter of fact, I think I sent you a photo of one of it looks like a teepee type structure that has an opening in it. I think I sent you one of those pictures. That is right there at the Triangle Marsh. Okay. And that is on from where my view was, because I'm at the point of it. at the tip of the triangle. Then it goes up and crosses here. There's like some bushes here, a bush here, and then there's that little teepee. And that is a old apple tree that had all the branches snapped down all the way around this thing to form this what looks like some type of shelter or a blind. And so I actually find a spot where there's a tree root that comes out and sits across like this, high off the ground, and nice little bench, perfect spot to sit. So I actually brought a lunch too with me, and Tom's like, "Oh, bring a lunch, bring a book, sit back, kick back, and read." I'm like, "Okay, good spot to test your theory." And so I sat down, and I cracked the book open, and I thought, okay, about the connection. All right, if you're here, give me a tree knock. It wasn't half a second later after I thought of that.
Are you serious?
I am absolutely serious. And it came from the southwest area, and it sounded like it was probably a quarter mile away.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, maybe that could have been an anomaly. I don't know. So I was like, okay, that was interesting. And that's me. Everything that I film and stuff, I don't say that it was made by a Sasquatch or structures or anything, because I didn't see him make it. I always put in a little video that I'll make for myself and say, well, that's interesting. What do you think? Is there a Boy Scout troop out here in the woods running around building all this stuff? If they're doing it, they're traveling all over the planet because these structures are everywhere, and they're all the same type of structures.
Right.
I've got so many. I just sent you just a little bit. But so I thought, well, okay, that's interesting. Well, maybe there is something to this. And maybe I am mentally connected to this guy. And so I'm reading and everything. And I about 5 minutes later, I look over to my left and I'm going, what is that? I stood up and I'm looking. I've rubbed my eyes, and I've absolutely rubbed my eyes trying to focus, because when I wear my glasses and take them off, it takes me a second to refocus, because these are just readers. And I've rubbed my eyes, and I look over going, now that wasn't there before. There's a new bush over there. And one of the questions I had in my mind is how they can hide in plain sight. So he's showing me exactly how he does it. And by this time, I rubbed my eyes 3 different times and looked at this. And I'm going, after the third time, I go, oh, you're here. That's you. I was like, cool. His hair has gone from just the blackest black you ever saw to silver. And what's strange about it is silver like 3/4 of the way down. And then the last little quarter is black still. So you get to kind of a salt and pepper kind of effect. But he sat there, he kind of down on his haunches like an ape sits, just kind of like on their heels. And he had his knuckles to the ground in front of him. So he just looked like this bush is all I could describe. I would think it was just kind of a bush sitting there. And he kept his head down, so I didn't see his eyes. And just 45 minutes stayed that way. Did not move a single hair. I went, that's how you do it. I said, I could have walked by you. I could have walked 3 feet from you and not knew you were there. Because it's, as you say, as I tell you, when we're hunting or anything or looking for something, we're looking for movement. And he did not move one single hair in 45 minutes that we had our company. I'm like, that's cool. I see you there, and Tom told me, ignore him. And I've heard that from a couple of people, say, just ignore them. The more you ignore them, the more curious they are and the longer they'll stay. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try all this. And so far, Tom's stuff is working, because there he is, he's here. And so it's about 10 minutes later, maybe 15. I'm sitting there reading through the book, and every once in a while, I just look out, make sure he's still there. And I'm reading, so I'm sure he's hearing what I'm reading in my mind, because I read it out loud in my mind, as I think most people do. And so I'm reading about Sasquatches and people being terrified. And thought about that afterwards, going, you know what? That might not have been the best book to take, because he's probably over there laughing in his own mind about the whole thing. Stupid humans. But I heard 3. I'm still calling them tree knocks, but the pops that were so fast it was like machine gun, and that was directly to my west. And this is first. Let me get to this first. I missed this part. As before he appeared, I heard a whistle. And I heard the whistle coming from the direction he was at, one to the direct west, and one to the north of me, behind me, up on the hillside. And that got me thinking, I'm surrounded. There's at least 3 of them here. And this is kind of a tactical thing when they whistle like that to tell each other, okay, are you in position? And what I'm finding more and learning from other people is they do things in kind of a militaristic manner. They're very good at it and very tactical. And the direction they left me to exit from where the 3 of them were was directly back to my vehicle. They left that open, because you hear people being escorted out. And I think that's what they do is that you're actually surrounded. If there's one there, trust me, there's more than one. And they're escorting you back towards your vehicle. That's the spot they leave open is the direction they want you to go. Everything else they kind of have blocked and they have it covered. But I heard those 3 whistles just before I saw him and he appeared. And I'm like, okay, there's 3 of you here. That's interesting because that's not a bird of any kind of sound I've ever heard in these woods. And I've been in these woods all my life. I spend every spare moment I can in the woods because I get my calm there. I go there to relax and I love nature. So I've got every type of plant in that area. Matter of fact, I just discovered I've got a huge patch of blueberry and wild huckleberries, which I'm going to keep my eye on because I'm going to be foraging ahead. Yeah. I'm making some huckleberry jam and some huckleberry pie. And I'll can some of that pops. And I'm like, that was like just inside the tree line, but I couldn't see nothing. It was close enough that I should have been able to see it in my vision, because I can see right in there through the trees a little bit. I mean, there's some brush and stuff, and it's a marshy area. Even that's marshy. There's a lot of dead windfalls running through there. And I'm like, how can something go through there and not make a sound or even a print for that matter? I went through there afterwards. The only prints I found, which I found in the juvenile, I now call him JJ. And he's the one that made the 3 fast pops. It sounded like a dang machine gun going off. It was so fast. I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And next thing I know, I look to my left and he's standing next to the alpha male. And the alpha male was still taller, even squatted down than the juvenile. That's the juvenile. That was JJ. And he was doing the typical rock. And somebody explained this, why they do that. When you're in the trees and you rock, try this going out there, and you rock back and forth, it gives you more of a visual of the area when you're moving back and forth like that and more of a 3D effect. I thought about that, went, you know what? You're right. You can see better when you're doing that little rock back and forth. So next time you're in the woods, try that and look through there and look at what you're seeing. You get to see the angles as you move back and forth, and you can see what's behind things a little better. You get a more of a visual perspective. So I thought, yeah, okay. So there's another question that's kind of answered, and others should try this. And, and that's the whole thing about the more information we have, the more we start to understand these creatures. But I look over there and the juvenile's there. I went, wow, I feel pretty honored. He's actually introducing me to his juvenile. That means there's a modicum of trust there. They've already given me. And, that felt pretty cool. That you're trusting me enough to introduce me to your juvenile. Well, basically why he's introducing me to the juvenile is because when I'm up there, he turns the juvenile loose with me. I'm the babysitter. That's what it's going to come down to, I think, is I know if he's with me, he hangs out with me a lot, but he stays fairly stealthy. But, he's practicing his ways. And I think that's what a lot of the tree structures in the area is the juvenile is being taught how to make these structures. And I don't know why they're being made or what they mean, and I want to take an EMF meter out and start running around these and see if they're power areas, because it's all granite. This whole mountain is granite, but it's full of water. There is water. I don't care. We've been in a 7-year drought and the water still flows up there. You can go all the way to the top of the mountain, dig down a foot, even at the worst drought, which we've had, and still hit water. It's hard to explain why this mountain is so full of water, but it's amazing. And there's a pond set up as a pond, but it's a spring. And that's a double spring, and it flows year round. And they go right down to it. Somebody, I think the Forest Service has stuck a hose in. They use it for a water sump for emergency, also for fires. And I think they actually drink out of the PVC pipe that was stuck down into this one spring spot that really gets the flow. And then, because I find their prints there, impressions of where they've been there, and it's right at the edge where the water comes out of the pipe. So I think they kind of pick up the pipe and get an easy drink instead of using their hands or anything else. But back at the sighting that I was having on number 5, which answered a lot of the questions. It answered my question on how do they hide in plain sight. Mm-hmm. That showed me right there exactly how he does it. And I understand it because a lot of people will see a tree stump and go, I've heard that a lot of accounts of that. It's like, I swear it was a burnout tree stump. And then it stood up and walked away. I'm like, yeah, now I understand that. And they answer my questions in ways like that they don't tell me or, put it into my mind. They show me and go, this is how it is. And so that sighting lasted for 45 minutes. Because I had looked at my phone when it started. I looked at my phone when it ended. I had brought it, and everybody's like, why didn't you take pictures? That's just beyond what, I was there for. Because the whole thing is ignore them for the most part. And the more you ignored them, the more they'd stay around because of curiosity. And that absolutely worked. And I wasn't going to jeopardize it. But on sighting number 6, I do have pictures. They're being enhanced right now by Scott Violet from Much America. He's got a friend that enhanced a couple of his. And I said, Scott, if I send you these, do you think your friend would enhance those for me? So I'm just waiting for those to come back because, well, I'll let you know when I get to that one, and we'll get to the specifics on that one. But yeah, after they left, I went up and I was like, well, there's got to be a track somewhere. There was a patch of snow just probably, I would say 30 yards up from where I heard the rapid pop. When the juvenile came in, I said, well, he came from that neighborhood. So I'm betting he used the roadway to get there, or at least part of the way. I found 3 of his tracks. I have pictures of one. And somebody said, oh, it's a bear. I said, no, there's no claws in it, first of all. And it's got a really heavy mid-tarsal break. And I mean, it's like about that angle. I mean, it was really tight from where he pushed off and pushed everything up behind it. And it was 9.5 inches, 3.5 inches wide. And he was 5 foot tall. And if you do calculations of the surface area and everything, and to height and weight and all that, it all matched up pretty well. So I went home immediately. I sent the print through text to Randy Sylvie, was one of the members of the Bend Bigfoot research group over in Bend. And he was part of my initial getting things off my chest during the Squatch and Brews. He was another one that was there, and he was instrumental in me, getting things out. And I tell him, I blame it all on him. I said, my whole Squatching thing's all your fault, Randy. Now I live it every second of the day. No, I'm not infatuated with the whole thing. No, I'm not. The ex is like, that's all you talk about. That's all you think about. Yeah, well,
exactly.
Yeah, I guess. Now I'm teaching others as well. But I sent the print to him. He got a hold of one of his group members, Shannon Munson, and she was down here in Grants Pass trying to get us hooked up so she'd come out, maybe cast the prints, and, I could tell my story and we could measure the whole site and do the whole 9 yards. But she was down visiting family, and it didn't quite work out to where she was able to come down. So at last minute before dark, and she finally said, well, I'm not going to be able to make it out. We got all these things happening, and it's just been too busy. I headed right for Lowe's, picked up a 25-pound bag of hydrocal and headed back for the woods. But by the time I got back up there, because it was 72 degrees that day, same as when I found the trackway. Funny how that happened the same way, come to think of it. And a lot of it had melted out. I had found one track that was 17.5 inches, the alpha male, which was up. Because where he was, there's actually a logging road right there, an old overgrown logging road that goes all the way around the Triangle Marsh and just heads on up towards where I initially heard his first pop when I asked for a tree knock. But there was 1, 2, 3, 4 prints in the snow. One I could see his toes in. But they weren't good enough because the sun had already been beaten down on that, and they weren't good enough to cast. But the one for the juvenile was good enough to cast. But by the time I got back up there, it melted out so much that one of the prints was almost completely gone. I had measured 32 inches between the first and the second print, and 34 between the second and third print. from heel to toe all the way up, so it was accurate. And so all I got was pictures. And then I learned afterwards, Cliff Barackman says he did a short little video on how to photograph and cast. He says that you photograph them from 5 different angles, 45 degrees, left, right, backside, and forward side, then one directly over the top. So I learned all that after the fact, of course. So unfortunately, there was another one I blew. But I do have a pretty good picture of that first print. And that was it. Unfortunately, I was hooked. From that point on, I was like, okay, Tom. And I got a hold of Tom. And I said, Tom, I was trying to call BS on you. I love you, but, a lot of people think, you guys are the woo crowd. You're half nuts. But I said it absolutely worked on my first time out to go to the woods and to encounter a Sasquatch with purpose, to be there to encounter a Sasquatch, and did it in the way that he was describing to do, which he calls armchair squatching. And it absolutely worked the first time out. So from that point on, I'm a researcher, and I've been going there every chance I get since then.
Have you ever experienced, you mentioned whistles and pops, which we talked about. Have you ever noticed or heard any vocalizations besides that at all when you're out there?
One very strange one.
Okay.
Not too far up, probably within, I would say, a quarter mile, was the first X in the area really nice one too. It's been since destroyed. I was glad my son got to see it, because about a week later it had been destroyed. And I think it was the Forest Service that's destroying, some of the structures that are up there. And I called it the phone booth. There was a rock. Hang on a second. Let me go grab it.
All right.
Now, under this rather large X, these logs were probably, I would say one was about 10 inches and the other one was probably 12 inches in diameter. One was held up by a madrone tree that was right there that was dead, but it had a Y in it. And they tend to use a lot of Ys that they find in trees. This just makes it easier, why not? Especially if you're by yourself building one. I used to do this as a contractor where I would, make myself little helper things, and they use these Ys. But one end, which was a butt end, was hooked on that Y. But exactly center under that X was this rock right here. And it's decomposed granite. I have pictures of it when it was just standing up, and you could see the outline of it in the ground from where it was impressed in the ground, and it had probably been there for 20, 30 years. For some reason, something picked it up and stood it up. And so the first picture I ever took of it, you can see the impression, which is probably close to an inch deep. So this rock has been laying there for probably 50, 60, 80, 100 years. So I call it the phone booth for a reason, because when I get there, the juvenile usually ends up coming up and hanging out with me for the day, or at least for a while. So I was up there one day, and this is where I really started calling it the phone booth. I heard the strangest scream from down below in the valley, and it was so strange I can't even describe it. And believe it or not, that's the only vocalization I've ever heard from them. And because I'm not there at night, when I think they feel more comfortable doing vocalizations at night than they do in the daytime, because they feel there's nobody out there or nobody really paying attention to what's going on out there. So, and that's one of my new things is I'll be getting a really nice sound recorder, a digital recorder. That's coming up here soon. Just, I'm a budget squatcher. I use what I have. I mean, my latest purchase was a IR infrared 4K video camera that takes 30 megapixel stills as well as video. So I was like, well, 30 megapixels, I could blow that up the size of a house and get detail. So unfortunately, the picture I took of the female Sasquatch was on my phone. So, it pixelates a little too quickly. And it's an older phone, so it's like 0.3 megapixel. So it's not really detailed. That's why it's being enhanced. But I heard that call. And what I think it was is they said, go play with Bill. And it was an excitement call that was made by the juvenile. It was a very strange call, but it wasn't more than 2 or 3 minutes later, I hear thump, thump, coming up the mountain. I could hear bipedal footsteps, just kind of a happy little walk coming up the hill. And then I heard it again. Thump, thump. I'm like, man, that's got some power and weight to it. I said, that's got to be the juvenile come up the mountain. And by the third set I heard, because each of them was about 6 or 8 steps, thump, thump, and you could just absolutely hear it, just power hitting the ground. And I should have been able to see him. And I'm looking, I'm going, because I could see right down through the trees all the way down. I'm like, I should be able to see where those steps are coming from. Couldn't see him, but I couldn't visually see him. So that's what got me to kind of start and go towards the camp of, well, maybe there's something to this cloaking thing, that they are able to go or either that or do something to your mind to where, they're taking themselves out of your mind as far as seeing them. I don't know, but the cloaking makes more sense because that seems to be a lot of people seeing that. And so I'm there, I'm going, okay, I hear you. I'm sure it's you, JJ, which is what I've named him. And I used to just call him Junior. Then I switched to JJ. And thought-wise, to me, the feeling was that he liked that better. Mm-hmm. So, but there's a culvert off to my left of where this is at. It just runs under the roadway, and it's about a 6-foot culvert. But it's straight down off the roadway. I'd have to use rappelling gear to get down there. And I wish I'd had a drone at the time because I would have nailed him inside that culvert. He's in there playing in the water. I can hear how, when you brush water and it just kind of humps up into a wave and he's pushing out of this culvert. And when I said on Pork and Beans show, Tom's like, well, that's not really a word. Sploosh. That's a word to me. Mike came to my rescue. Harold. He's like, oh, no, Bill said it. It's a word. But he did that several times. He's inside that thing playing in the water. And I can hear him in there. And I'm like, man, you little snot, I can't get down there. And I know you're in there. And so he's in there playing in the water, doing his little thing, moving the water out and just pushing it out in the waves. I said, well, at least you're getting a bath. You probably stink. I talk to them like they're my best friend. I really do. I give them crap, whatever it takes. I talk to them like they're my best friend or a family member, like they're one of the family. And I think that actually goes a long ways with them. It really does, because that gives them me showing that I've accepted them for what they are. And I absolutely have. But so the next time I was up there, it was just a couple weeks later. And I'm at the phone booth, and the rock had been moved. So we started playing this little game. I know it was the juvenile. I put it back in the hole, stood it back up, and we did this for over a year. Standing it back, going back up. And the only reason I took the rock is because the structure was completely destroyed. I mean, it is just wasted. You could never tell that it was ever an X of any sort. Well, I got up there about a week later or actually a couple of weeks later, and I hear this whistling. It's on top of the mountain, the opposite way of where it came from the first time. And just an excited whistle like he's up there and woohoo, Bill's here. All right. And then he kind of hung out with me for a couple hours. And when I'm driving up there, I'm always looking for new things, and I'm looking for trails, looking for the deer trails, see how much food there is, and, that they're not over hunting, the area, because I want them to be there a long time so I can access them. And I could hear him just inside the tree line following me up as I'm going. I got my windows down and just hear his footsteps coming through and just kind of going with me as I go up the roadway. And most of the activity that I have has been where the springs are. And so I usually make a line up to the spring. There's a spot there that I call actually the dining room. And it's between the beginning of the access road and where the spring is. And because there's archways weaved there, there's lots of arched structures that are in there. There's teepee structures that are in there. There's one that all the trees are put up in a teepee, but there's one that is forked that comes around and it's against the other tree, and this other log is fed up through the fork, which, that doesn't happen in nature. It's absolutely impossible. And the one with the fork in it is broke at the tip and laid over into this tree just exactly where it would fit perfectly. And it's still attached to the bottom section. It's just at a 90 degree, leaned up against the tree with the other one stuck through it and other ones around it. And matter of fact, when I was there the other day, I just got back from Beachfoot. It's like, I got to go to my area. I can't help it. I got to go up there. Absolutely, it looked like there'd been some added to it. So that was kind of neat. But yeah, I captured the rock and decided I was keeping that puppy, because that kind of meant something for a thing between me and the juvenile.
Right.
So, but the next sighting, which would be my number 6 and my last one, since we're getting up there time-wise here. Well, I have to work too. I am, if you notice, oh, here we go, in my work uniform. So I work knock shift at Food for Less here in Medford. So if anybody wants to stop by and chat with me, I'm on aisle 2. I'm the condiments guy. I lift all the heavy glass stuff, pickles and all that fun stuff. And, we can chat while I work, because I won't stop working unless I have time, but I will chat with you. So, and also Scott has asked me, Scott from Squatch America has asked me if I would be his report taker for Southern Oregon area. Oh. So I felt pretty honored. Now I looked at him, I said, Scott, I am strictly a field researcher, but all these reports actually will help me, and as far as understanding and things along that line. And who knows, I'd get some casts out of it and whatever else, and plus I get to probably help these people kind of understand what's really happening, and because it does freak out a lot of people, and kind of calm them and let them know that, hey, they're not what you think they are. They look scary, but they're actually quite gentle, very family oriented, and actually very gentle creatures. So my next sighting, my 5th sighting, that was on March 27th, 2021, by the way. And so somebody can look up the podcast of Pork and Beans and find the little section where Tom said, about the connections and all that. And that puts you all in the same time area. And you and I have been trying to link up for, I think almost a year or over a year.
It's been at least a year.
Yeah. It's been a while. But I was hoping for, I was prepared to do the other one. And that was the whole thing. I want to, before I got on yours, is to be more comfortable with talking about things. I didn't want to be out there going, or have to have anything in front of me. There's nothing in front of me. These are all from memory, and they'll be the same every time. Yeah. Because this is what I experienced. This is what I saw. So I became a researcher. So I started documenting this. The area that I'm in is a nice little valley. It goes from 3,200 feet at the base of the valley up to 5,200 feet at the top of the valley. There's a road that goes up both ways and connects at the top. Then there's another one. It's a connection at the top that goes over the mountain and down the other side there. So it's all in the same area, and all the activity as far as structures, everything are in this little valley. It's a 13-mile loop from start to finish. So I can start from the highway, go up, run the loop, come across, and then there's another road that cuts through that goes across the springs that connects at the bottom of the valley. But it's a full 13-mile loop all the way around. Lucky number 13. It's not bad luck. It's actually good luck. But I started documenting all the structures, and believe me, I sent you just a tiny little piece. I've got hundreds of tree breaks, of archways. I've got, I think, 7 asterisks. I've got tridents. I've got stars. Matter of fact, I found one I buried my cat up there last December, and it was in the middle of a really heavy windstorm. So I was thinking in my mind that this is where I wanted to go, and thinking to them, kind of sending messages to them that I wanted to bury my cat up there at the spring, because she was special. She was my best little buddy. Even though it was the ex's cat, she became a nice little buddy. You know how I am with animals. So, So I started thinking in my mind that I want to come up there, and I'm going to need the road cleared, because I know nobody's been able to go up there because we're still in the middle of the storm. And so I'm preparing to go up. I've got my cat all prepared and everything, and I do it in a native way because she was a friend and part of the family. So I'm thinking to them, I need the road clear. Well, there's no way I could have gone up there without trees being across the road, at least in 3 or 4 places. As a matter of fact, I think I counted 5 different spots where there had been trees that came down in the wind, the deadfalls or windfalls. And I told them, pictured in my mind what route I was taking up there, because there's a couple ways I can get there. Actually, probably about 5 different routes I can get there. But it is actually quite remote. The nearest town is in one direction, and I'm talking a town like probably 50, 60 people. One way is like 15 miles. The other way, it's 10 miles. And there is 2 places on the in between the main road and the other connecting road that runs up the other side of the valley that are close to the roadway. But that's still from where my sightings have been at least 3 miles away. And the houses coming up one way, the closest there is about 6 miles away. Going over the mountain, you're looking at about 15 miles. Going the other direction of the 10 miles, there's a few little scattered houses and one little town there. It's not really a town. It's just a handful of houses and that's it. So it is actually more remote than you think, but remote, but easily accessible because of the roadways that are in there. But started documenting all these different structures and things that, I had seen, and, finding Bigfoot actually helped me with those because, they were showing tree structures and different things. And I went, wow, I've got those. I was looking at shows like Yowie Central and finding they've got the same stuff in Australia. Mm-hmm. Looking over at some sites in Europe, in Great Britain. They don't have a lot of contact over there, but they do have contact, and there are very similar tree structures. Vietnam, China, just all over the world. Everywhere you go, the only place is Antarctica that would be void of things that are in Alaska, Canada, Mexico, South America. These creatures are everywhere. People just don't realize how many there really are. And they, like Doug Hychek figures, probably about 6,500. I think there's much more. I think there's much more. I think they're in the tens of thousands. It's just they're scattered all over the world, and they're scattered in the areas that we don't go. I mean, they go up stuff that, no, I'm not going up there. I'm very careful because I do this all by myself. And right. So I'm very cautious not to get injured. I actually have a Sasquatch killed bear sitting out here in my shed. The back legs were tucked up inside of the rib cage.
Wait, can you repeat that?
I have a Sasquatch killed bear.
Okay.
The neck is wrung like a wrung out washcloth. The skull and everything's still in there. All the paws were pinched off, at least the front 2. The head still encased in the skin, all twisted up. And the back paws were still attached to the skin, but not in the body. Yeah, it'll blow your mind.
Okay.
I said, there's only a couple people that know about this. Now you all know about it.
Well, that's fine because no one listens to this.
Okay, we're safe.
Wink, explain to me what. So, did you find a dead bear, or?
I was on my way back from visiting my grandchildren, so I took the back roads, and which because I hate taking the freeway. I hate taking the same way. It's just boring. And I was like, no, you're not going to stop by your area. No, you're going by it. No, you're not going to stop by it. Oh, yeah, you are. You're going to stop by your area and go check on it. So I get up this one area, and it's the spot between where you turn off on the cutoff road at the base of the area to the spring. And I call it now I call it their dining room or the kitchen after I found the bear. But I pulled up there, and there's this arch tree that's right there, and that's where I leave my offerings, is on that tree. But what I hate to leave there is because it's very visible from the roadway, so anybody could go up and just destroy whatever I've got there. So I've learned to go to the back of one of the trees close to that and tack like a bag on with some tacks and put fruit and garlic and tangerines. That's what I left last week. But I took pictures of this the first day I found it, and the meat there was just a very minuscule layer of meat on the ribs that I could see, and a little bit back on the pelvic area. And you can see the gray because the meat, after about 24 hours, it's going to turn gray, especially if it's really thin, any meat that's left out. And it was like the meat had been stripped off just right down just before that tough layer, that you get in the ribs, the piece that we're always gnawing on and pulling, I don't think it's digestible, but we eat it anyways. At least I do. I'm a carnivore. I'm sorry. I love ribs. But it had that gray layer of meat on there. I was like, wow, this is fresh. I didn't know what it was because it's straight down a bank, and it's like, I'm not getting myself hurt going down there. And I was just in there just to check on the area anyhow, but that's what I discovered. So I took pictures of it that very day. So I have those pictures to compare it to when I actually got the carcass. And the cool part is, and I think they knew I was going to ask for this bear, is through one of the vertebrae of the neck was a stick stuck through the vertebrae. It didn't fall that way because it's like, let me get on here. It's hard to get the camera. It takes a minute. It was like this far through the vertebrae. So if it fell, it shot right through this neck bone because it wouldn't go down this way. It had to be stuck through the vertebrae. And then another stick. And guess what I had at the neck? And sorry, folks, I got to tell you, one thing I really want to express to you and drive home as an X does not mean keep out when it comes to Sasquatches. Remember, they're very similar to us, but they're not us. And their language is different than ours, but I am finding that all the X's that I find are a welcome sign. They're actually welcoming you to the area. They know you're coming. And if you recognize that, it was meant for you. It was absolutely meant and put there for you. And so those are the places, if you want to go squatching, that's where you start. That's where you want to go. But there was an X at the neck because they already knew I was going to take it. They already knew I was going to ask, and I asked them permission for it. I asked for, just like when I took the photographs of the female, I asked permission. And I explained like I needed to. She already knew what they were, knew what a photograph was because, like I said, they can look in your mind. They can get any information they want. And you can't hide anything from them. And don't try. It's not worth it. And I'm armed. They don't mind me being armed. And the reason why is because they know it's not for them. And I have no intention of ever firing at them and just piss them off. Like me getting hit with a BB is like, now I'm mad. But I wasn't able to go up to the area for a while. So I came back in 7 weeks, Jeremiah. It had not been touched. That does not happen in nature.
That's weird, man.
That does not happen. When a deer or anything, you find a roadkill, go back a week later, tell me what's left of it.
Yeah.
Tell me what's left of it. Find pieces of it. You might find a few pieces here, maybe a rib bone here, maybe a leg bone over here, but 99% of it's going to be gone. The forest tends to clean up after itself. We have the first stage, you're looking at the ravens and turkey vultures. They go in, they take whatever they can of any meat and sinews that are left and, any cartilages, and they've removed that. And that's what got my attention the second time of going up there and finding the carcasses. I came upon, and I'm looking at feathers. Turkey vultures were there, and they're kind of have always been one of my spirit guides because we're the ones that clean up the messes. And that's always kind of been my forte is, when it hits the fan, I'm the one that helps make everything okay and figure everything out and stay calm and clear everything up. And so I'm picking up feathers, and I look down, that carcass is still there, and it's untouched. There is not one. The only marks that were on it was from the turkey vulture picking at the joints and stuff and pulling some of the sinews up. I have the whole thing intact. There's been a couple rib bones fall off. I'm maybe going to ask Mark Marcel because he's good at rearticulating bones because he works at the aquarium up there in Westport, Washington. And he's done whales and does from small fish and amphibians all the way up, to an entire whale, which took a couple of years to do. But with the help of family, he got that put together, and it's at the museum up there. Because they have a museum and aquarium all in one thing.
Right.
But Scott's going to be here. Scott's an anthropologist from Squatch America. Scott Violet. He's right now in Cave Junction. They've got a thing going on that's supposed to probably be happening today down there. And I think he's down there taking reports and different things, kind of like a town hall doing a thing. Him and Greg from Rogue Weather did one, and they were only expecting maybe 100 people to show up, and there was like 3 times that showed up.
Really?
It was standing room only, and people were cramped. And Cave Junction is kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It's just a connecting place. That's where you'll find the Oregon Caves, and there's been lots of activity out there. There's some pretty famous stories that have happened right there at the Oregon Caves. One, I think, was a doctor, and as a matter of fact, I met him there recently. So, but he was there with his family and was able to have a sighting of a Sasquatch.
Wow.
But it's kind of remote. Cave Junction is, But yeah, the place was packed. You couldn't have stuffed a couple more people in there with a stick. Yeah, it was that packed. He said we took lots of great reports, and it was just a fabulous time. So Scott's over there doing another one today. I was like, Greg going to be with you? He said, oh, no, not this time. He's like, well, if you want to come up. I said, well, I've got to work, unfortunately. Well, what's good is, my days off are like Monday, Tuesday during the week. And so when I off Monday, Tuesday, nobody else is out in the woods. They're weekend warriors. So it makes it pretty convenient. I hardly ever run across anybody out there. Even the hunting season last year, one vehicle, the entire hunting season. That's all that I ran across, one vehicle. And because this area has grown up enough that it's really not good for deer hunting anymore. There's only one section, which is a prairie section at the top, that you could even see anything. So unless you know the mountain like I do, most people are what you call road hunters. They just drive around in their vehicle. Something jumps out. Well, they're going to shoot it. And unfortunately, when they're shooting it, it's illegal the way they shoot it because you're not allowed to shoot from the road in this state. You have to be such a distance off the road and everything else. And, and plus baiting animals is illegal here as well. And I've found pumpkins up there and watermelons and all kinds of things from poachers or people during hunting season baiting the animals. And they'll shoot them right on the roadway, which is illegal. Me, I'm in the woods. And when these people drive by, guess what I do? I do the spider crawl. I'm on the ground, let them go by. I don't want to get shot because I stopped hunting for the longest time because I got tired of playing follow the beer cans. I'm out in the woods. They're drinking. They have guns. I'm armed, mind you. I carry a 44 Magnum here, plus a rifle. I carry a 30-06. It'll reach out and touch someone from a long ways away.
Yeah.
And the 44 is to disable their engine because I'm going to blow up your block. You point your rifle at me, we got a problem. You scope me out, which is illegal. That's what they made binoculars for, not your rifle scope. Your rifle scope is to put it on that animal, get an accurate shot, and hopefully a kill on the first shot. But, yeah, I'm more worried about the human factor out there in the woods than I am anything else.
Absolutely.
I have no problems with bears. They're more afraid of you than you are of them. Matter of fact, I chased one down here last summer. Yeah, I'm nuts. But just to get a photo of him, all I got was his butt end. So unfortunately, he was a little faster than the big boy here. I've gained a little weight, but I've lost 35 pounds since then. So
hey, good for you. That's awesome.
I'm looking better, getting in good shape. I was at the pond one day and I am sitting there, which I've never heard in my life with all the time I've been out in the woods. Meow. Are you kidding me? Is there a house cat out here? I've never heard a cougar meow in my life.
Are you serious?
And it was a cougar. And and it meowed about 8 different times. I had never heard it happen personally. And as soon as I got home, I'm on the internet. Does a cougar meow? And I found like 3 examples of it that somebody had recorded. I went, that's it. I said, are you kidding me? They sound just like a house cat, except a little more powerful. But yeah, I'm sitting there at the pond, and that gets me to a lesson that my clan taught me that day. I got one of those mind speak things that day. I was on the other side. I hadn't made it down to that roadway yet, and I was kind of clearing my mind. I'm like, well, I know the she squatchers. They're all friends and all the things that they do a lot of remote viewing. So I'm going to start practicing that. It's raining. Oh, excuse me. Raining. I'm out on this landing in an area where I don't have too much activity. And I was just enjoying the rain, and I'd walked out on this landing, and what kills me is all the garbage that people leave behind. And that's one good way to gain respect for the Sasquatch folks is to clean up, pack stuff out, pick up the trash. They see you doing this. They understand you doing this. But I was told while I was there and clearing my mind and everything, the thought jumped in my head from them, go directly to the spring. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't get to remote view, but I got a little telepathy there. Okay, I guess I'll accept that. Okay. So I headed towards the spring, and me with OCD, squirrel. I got to the dining room where I got the bear and everything, and had to stop. I got out. I made 3 steps from my van, and I turned around, went right back and strapped on my pistol, jacked a shell in, was locked and loaded. I think they were First of all, testing my abilities to listen and take direction. Well, I was halfway there before I saw the squirrel. But yeah, I felt I was in danger. And so I was all prepared. And the way I go look at things, I go to an area and I spend 15 minutes looking at every little thing. I'm looking for changes. I'm looking for anything new. I'm looking for activity, fresh trails, anything new. And then I'll walk 50, 75 feet, and I do the same thing, 15 minutes. I look at everything that's there, and that's part of my way of, looking, see if I'm finding recent activity, if I know they're there, have they been going down here? But yeah, I made it up to the pond, and that's when I realized that they just taught me a lesson about listening. First of all, I'll go directly to the pond, because if I had, they'd have probably been there and protected me from the cougar. But I think they also test me to see what my reaction would be to the cougar, if I was going to just go run after it and kill it, or if I was going to accept it as being part of nature and deal with it, which I've always accepted those things. I have no problem with them. I've been face to face with cougars several times, so there's a lot of them up there and a lot of bear. And I have no problem with them. You just look bigger than they are. They actually never come after me or come to approach me. They'll just look at me and just continue on their way, like I'm just, another part of nature, which I try to be when I'm out there. But after I heard the 8 meows from this cougar as it was going across the pond by me, it was just out of my view, but I know it was right at the back of the pond because how close the sound was. And then it's just started getting further and further away and still meowing as it's walking off. About 15 minutes later, I get the juvenile in the pop, and it was like 50 feet away from me. So I know it's the juvenile JJ because he's the bold one. The juveniles are very bold. They're very much jokers. They like to mess with you. And I am the only human he knows, so he experiments on me. So like infrasound, things along that line. You go, oh, I can make Bill really sick and make him throw up. Yeah, I was like, don't do that again, please. That was not cool. But anyways, I'll get into my sixth sighting, my last one. And this was September 13th of last year. And this was after I found the bear carcass. And a week after I picked up the bear, there was also a deer in the same spot. It was a young spike deer, and its lower jaw had been torn off, like when they were twisting its head to do the twist, and the pelt was missing. And that's another thing that clicked in my mind is I've read several stories where they've seen them wearing a deer pelt, maybe while they were hunting or to blend in. And I thought, that pelt should be here. Nope. I found the entire carcass. I found the skull to start with, and I walked down and I found the carcass. And it was cleaned the same way the bear was. So I figured it was theirs, and that's what they had done. And this one I decided to leave there. Matter of fact, I just took a picture the other day of some of the remnants, because on it, not where it was left, the skull, it was on a log close to probably 10 feet from where I found the bear, the jawbones. Right there, and the upper and lower, but that's all that was there, was just the upper and lower jawbones on a tree when it was left down below where the bear was killed. So this is from where the bear was killed and where I left that skull, because I was going to maybe get take the little horns for a little knife or something, because I use horns all the time. I do a lot of work. I make buttons and different things out of the deer horn. It was probably 25, maybe 30 feet away from where I left that skull, and it was placed on top of a log. So there aren't too many people or too many things that pick things up and place them on top of things. So I took pictures of those, and the funniest part is the first picture I took was blurry, and it looked clear on my camera, but it was blurry when I took the shot. I'm like, that's kind of weird. And that happened to me when I was with Tom Cantrell, because we felt at two different spots that there was something there, that there was a Sasquatch in the area and kind of watching us. And I took a picture of this X, and it was perfectly in focus when I snapped that thing, but it came out blurry. I actually posted it last week, go, well, here you go, and you can tell they were present because it blurred it, and it shouldn't have blurred. There was no reason for that to happen. But the second shot I took came out crisp and clear. But the first one I took when we were feeling that there was something there, came out blurry because, they're an high energy being. To do the things that they do, be able to cloak, it's about their energy is what I'm figuring. That's where you get into more things with Ron Moorhead and the quantum physics, which I've always been interested in quantum physics. I love about all the smallest things and things like the Bose-Higgs molecule that they were calling the God molecule. But what they don't understand is that's the smallest thing they've been able to come up with. But what makes that up? There's something even smaller that makes that up. Then what makes that up? There's something smaller than that. That's when you start looking at infinity, and I don't even want to go there because when I start thinking about it, it just screws my brain up.
It just messes your head up, yeah.
Because you can't stop. You can't stop. It's an infinite loop. But for months after that, I was going on the roadways, and I would just open my door, and I'm getting out to look at a spot or something that I spotted, maybe a footprint, one footprint on a vertical bank. Unfortunately, you can't cast it. Perfect toe marks, everything else. To where they like jump from the road up and leaped off that bank, hit that footprint and over the top, to get up to the top. I was like, pretty impressive. And it was the juvenile. It was the size of his print. And his prints are up to 10 inches now. He's grown, and I think he's a little closer to 6 feet tall. Because from the photograph that I took last year, which I thought he split, because he was next to Mama on the other side of the tree, just kind of hanging on this branch like this. You see his hair hanging down and everything. I said, well, I'm going to take a photograph. If it's okay, may I take a photograph of you? He was gone. He split. I'm like, and I called him out. Sorry, kids, but I called him a chicken shit. Remember, I talk to him just like I do my friends or family.
Right.
And I thought he'd bailed. But actually, here just a few weeks ago, I really started looking at those pictures and blowing them up. He's with her. He's right behind her, and he's leaning out. So that's why I want to have those photos enhanced. Scott's working on that, make that happen for me. But for like a month and a half leading up to that sighting, I would open my door and I would hear, Bill, in a very proper kind of librarian female voice that was just a proper but very ladylike voice. And I'm like, I'm the only one out here. There ain't no women running around the woods out here, and I never correlated it to where maybe that's a voice she's using for me until, I had my sighting with her. And this happened for about 6 weeks leading up to my sighting. And I would be out in the middle of the woods somewhere and I'd hear, Bill, in that ladylike voice. I'm like, I really think this is driving me nuts. I said, I think I need to have my sanity checked because there's things happening out here I can't explain. And it's like I say, every time I get out there, I said, hey, Bill's here. And, that didn't dawn on me that, they're doing the same thing and going, oh, Bill's here. And she's saying, Bill. And I think if it had dawned on me, I actually would have had a sooner sighting with her. So, because sometimes and I tell them, and I relay to them, hey, sometimes you got to put a billboard up for me because I got to see this, I'm not understanding this, because sometimes it just goes out of my head. I'm new to this. Remember, so sometimes you got to, make a billboard sign for me to pay attention to what's really happening. And this happened for weeks and I thought I was going nuts. I'd tell Tom because I keep in touch with him as much as possible. I said, man, he said, just keep every time go with it, Bill. Go with it. Just go with it. Don't worry. It'll come together. So I'm up there one day, and this was September 13th, and I'm going up the road to where the asterisk is. And I did send you a picture of the big asterisk. And there's a gravel pit before that. Then you go on around, it's probably a few hundred yards. And I'm looking, and I've been noticing this bank. And I've heard people say that when they go up a very steep incline, they're like us. They don't walk straight up it because they can't. So you turn your foot sideways and do a side hill thing. Because when you do that side hill, you push that dirt down. And it gives you more surface area to hold on to. And if your foot slips, it just compacts the dirt underneath you. So you don't go very far, and you can get up that hill. And I'm looking at this spot and I see a triangle going up. There's where they went up this way or where they went up this way. And it's not bear marks I'm looking at. I'm like, this is a fair-sized foot that's doing this, and I don't think people are doing this because I'm the only one out here. I rarely ever come across anybody out here. Even though it's very accessible, usually most of the locals just use it as a a quick get over so they can avoid going to the freeway. They can come over to Medford. They can go visit friends that are over on this other side. And, it's between two major rivers, which is another good thing. There's lots of water. There's fish. There's lots of food sources. I have seen elk. Actually, it's up there, which I had never seen before. There's blue grouse, which are huge. They're the size of a chicken. Rough grouse, quail, just every kind of thing you can think of. There's coyotes up there. There's, of course, cougar and bear. And the different amounts of different types of food that grow up there, all the different types of berries that are up there, aside from the huckleberries, the blueberries, the blackberries, blackcaps, marionberries are up there. There's just everything, lots of medicinal stuff as well. And from what I understand, I've been told that they're master herbalists. They got to be able to. It's not like the Sasquatch is going to go knock on the hospital door when something happens. So they have to know how to take care of themselves. And that's why I take them garlic. I'm feeling that, garlic is a great healer. It's also a natural antibiotic. It's good for a lot of different issues. So I take them garlic. And nothing else in the woods will take the garlic. Bears don't want nothing to do with it. Deer don't want anything to do with it. The birds don't touch it. They're the only thing that eats garlic is bugs. And it's a specific type of worm that'll get in there and eat it. And they don't eat much of it, because it's pretty powerful. And the wild garlic that you find are these little tiny things, you got 5 miles of stem, but you got this little tiny chunk. So I'm sure they really appreciate getting up there, and they got a clove that's half the size of my fist. And they're like, yeah, we love you, Bill. But I'm looking at these side steps going up, and I'm trying to find toe prints, and I could make out kind of toe prints, and a few of them are going, oh, I heard about this, that when it's really steep, and this is a very steep section, I wouldn't walk up it. There's no way. You put me on a rope, and some gear, I will try to get up there. And I'm actually not in bad shape right now for being 59 years old. Better shape than I was a year ago. Like I said, I've dropped 35 pounds. I've bulked up by doing the job that I do. And running circles around the kids that we hire in, because I've outlasted most of them. There's a few of us old guys on there, and we make the kids look bad. Some will tell you, I'm slow, but no, I keep up with everything. But I was looking at these, and then I heard pop, and it couldn't have been more just off the side of the road on the other side. Couldn't have been more than 50 feet away. And I holler out, JJ, I know you're pop, buddy. I said, how you doing, my friend? And I brought my guitar. I had my guitar in there because I was going to sit up, and I do that often, sit on the mountaintop and play my guitar and play my music. And so I went to the back of the van, got my guitar out. Well, that allowed JJ and Mama, because I just call her Mama, to get across the road and get up to where they were, where it's a tree. And I played my guitar for about 45 minutes to them. And I look out, they're still there hanging out, and just seemed to be enjoying. I mean, they didn't throw anything at me, so I figured it was okay. No tomatoes coming my way. And then I go up to the front of the van, and I start talking to them. And, I talk about everything, just like I would with anybody else, catching up on a conversation. Love, life, everything else, and, how much things are going, or, if things suck today or whatever's going on. And they just hung around. Then I mentioned taking a photograph, and that's when JJ seemed to have just bolted that instant. And I said, I'm going to do it on my phone. I said, even the camera that has I told him, the nose that comes out, it won't hurt you. It's not a gun, and I explained what an image was. I told him this is because I told him that our memories as human beings are fallible, especially the older we get. I said, and the thing about an image, which I remember, and I've taken millions, I'm probably in 1.5 million, close to 2 million photographs that I've taken in my lifetime, because I've always been efficient with the camera. I have old SLR 35 millimeter cameras put away because that's kind of the old thing. Try to find 35 millimeter film anymore.
Right.
Now I'm looking at probably an EOS 7 right now that I'm wanting to buy, that's going to have manual and automatic on the adjustments. That because manual, I'm actually faster than the autos are as far as tuning things in, because I did it for so long. But all I had with me, I did have my 4K hadn't come yet. It came like 2 days later.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I was like, man, I sure wish I had my 4K. I wish I had my 4K. I wish it was here. So I got my cell phone in hand because I didn't want to scare him with my other camera. And I said, if you don't mind, I'll just take one with my cell phone here. But I explained to her, I said, a photograph is a moment captured in time that when we look back at it, it draws us right back to that moment for a reflection of what happened at that very moment. I recognize every picture I've ever taken. And I can tell you about the circumstance of what I was taking or what I was doing at that time, all the way back to my first photographs. Even though I've taken that many, up to 1.5 million, possibly 2 million. Even my ex, she borrowed some of mine. Well, at least she thought they were hers, and posted them up on her Facebook. And I went, "What are you doing, stealing my picture?" She says, "No, I took that picture." I said, "I can prove to you I took that picture. Let me tell you what we were doing and what happened when I took that photograph." And I explained to her exactly what was going on and everything. She said, "Yeah, well, maybe you did." I said, "Yes, I did take that photograph. Matter of fact, it's on my computer. Would you like me to show you that one?" I said, "You stole it off my Facebook, butthead." But I asked her permission to take a photograph, and she allowed me to take 2. And like I said, I didn't realize until just probably a month and a half ago that JJ didn't split. He was with her. Because I was looking at the photos and I'm going, boy, I see this kind of split. That's kind of odd. What is that back there? And I started blowing them up and I see, oh, JJ's in there, the juvenile. He's just kind of by her and he's just kind of leaning out from Mama. And that's what I showed Scott when we were at Beachfoot. And he said, "Oh, yeah, let me take care of those for you." I said, "Yeah, check it out. Send it to your friend and see if he can do anything." I said, "The problem was it was taken from a cell phone." I said, "It's very low as far as, it's like 0.3, I think, megapixels. It's not much. I'll have to look it up and find out exactly what it is." But I measured out, I was exactly 68 feet away from her. After I took the photograph, I asked her to move up to, there's a giant Douglas fir just above her, just a couple feet above her, that's like 8 feet through at the base. I said, why don't you go and be behind the tree there? I need to walk up and make sure there was no stump there. So to make sure that this was actually you, I was taking a photograph of, because they know my vision's not the best. I've told them. I said, so, and I could see where, and I have photographs where you can see where they stepped up the bank to be right where she was for me to take this photograph, and that there was nothing there. Also, I took 2 shots previous to this. That was before he did the pop. There's was a tree stump up there, and the sun started shining through a hole that was in the stump, and it was in the shape of a heart. I'm going to print that up and send it to Arla, because Arla collects hearts. And I said, Arla, this happened just minutes before my sighting. I said, and it was the coolest thing. I looked up and, wow, there's a perfect heart that the sun is shining through it, and it's all lit up, this perfect heart in the middle of this tree stump. I said, that was kind of a cool anomaly. The next thing is I'm with the female and the juvenile. And that lasted, as a matter of fact, I'm the one that actually stopped the sighting. Told them, hey, you guys know I got responsibilities that I take care of, and I'm very adamant about taking care of my own responsibilities at home. That I have somebody at home I need to get dinner to and take care of things. But it was an hour and a half that I spent with them, of chatting, playing my guitar, and doing all these things. And I just had the time of my life. I love it. And I just crave the time that I can be with him. So it hasn't happened. Actually, it has. I was up camping. We had some storms roll through here. And I decided I'm staying on the mountaintop that night. Matter of fact, I went up there earlier in the day, and I found in the snow another short trackway, Mama and Jay's prints, because I know them by the size. Hers is 14 and a half inches by 4, a little over 4 inches wide. His are now 10 by just under 4. It's like 3 3/4, right in that neighborhood. And I went, oh, I got the trackway. So I'm going to stay just maybe 100 yards from there. And this is at the top of the mountain. And so I drove all the way back to town, got some camping gear. I picked up wood along the way, all the way up the mountain. Now, somebody had left some stuff down at the pond, which kind of made me mad that they're even camping at the spring. There's a spot right across the road, right there. You can see the spring that's got a fire pit. You can camp there. All the animals drink from that water. Stay away from the spring. It just kind of upsets me when people are up there, because there was a squatter up there that left an absolute mess. This is a cool story. This is a cool story, I'll tell you. They left their tent covering all this garbage. Half the stuff that was covered by the tent was probably stolen. people's photographs, everything else. And I mean, it just upset me to see that there. And aside from that, the mess that they left behind. And I was talking out because I always talk out loud when I'm out there. I told you, if you come across me in the woods, you're going to think I'm nuts. This guy's out here talking to himself, and talking about all kinds of weird stuff, Say, hi, I'm Bill. I'm here carrying on conversations by himself. No, I'm speaking to them specifically because I not only think it, but I speak it. Mama and the juvenile are verbal. It's the alpha male that does the telepathy with me. They choose not to. They choose to verbalize. And this leads up to when I first heard JJ speak, which was just a few weeks ago. It was just last month. I stayed up there in the middle of a storm, and I filmed some of it from sitting inside my cab because I was waiting for a break in the storm to get all the wood out of the back of my van, so I could lay down in there and get some sleep because I was exhausted. On my days off, I just stay up. I don't go to bed, until I just can't stand it no more. Then, I'll lay down and go to sleep. Because I switched myself back onto a day thing because that's when everything happens. You can't get much done in the middle of the night. People get upset when you fire up a weed eater or something at 3:00 in the morning. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's weird.
But it's just not on my schedule. I don't know why. There should be more people on my schedule. They should be comfortable with it. Go, oh, that's cool. He's blowing leaves at 3 a.m. Yeah, but for some reason they get upset. So I switched myself to 2 days a week. That's why I don't sleep a lot because I screw up my sleep so badly. But yeah, it's storming like crazy. And these are quarter-size raindrops coming down. Lightning, thunder everywhere. The wind was just blowing everything sideways. It was just, I was loving every minute of it because I love that stuff. I love nature. I don't care what part of nature it is, even the wild part. I love it. I've been in tornadoes. About the only thing I haven't been in is a hurricane. I've been down the south that way, but I've never experienced a hurricane. So that's probably about the only thing I've been in thunder snowstorms. 2 of them, and that's the coolest thing in the world. It's snowing, and when that lightning shoots out there, everything lights up like daytime. Yeah, it's after 8, but the next day I get the fire going. I stoke up the fire, get it going good, and I walk up towards where the trackway was that I found, and I figured, the rains probably just decimated the snow that was there because it was just the most amazing downpours that were coming down. And when I got back up to the snow track, I didn't walk up to it. I drove up to it a little while later, but it was still there. Most of the prints were still there. I was just blown away that it didn't get washed away or rained out. That was very odd. But I get about halfway up there. I'm just walking up the road, just going on a little morning stroll, get my blood pumping. And I thought I saw a little bit of a structure on one side, and I kind of dismissed it, but there was an arch there that an old log was laid on top of, and the tree that was arched was way too young for that log to have fallen on it because the log was actually placed there from somewhere else. And I went, oh, okay, well, that part's probably real, and I'm real critical when I look at these things. I got to make sure that it wasn't it's not a deadfall. It's not a windfall. It was built this way. Could a person do this? Like, I have a large arch structure that goes up about 35 feet high. It's a big arch. The tree is probably 80, 90 feet long that's arched, and there's an X in it, and it's all compressed and held in place by the compression of these X's in the middle, which there's no way in nature that could happen. And my son got to see this, and he went from being on the fence about Bigfoot to going, wow, Dad, because I just watched his face just kind of blink and drop and wanted him to really analyze this thing. And I'm pretty proud of him. He came to pretty much the exact same conclusions I have on. And I said, okay, how many do you think it took to build this thing? He said, well, at least 3, Dad. He said, one had to be holding the arch down. The other one putting one of these posts going up of the X forming, weaving it in and out of the trees to put it under compression. And while another one is putting the second one up and doing the same thing, weaving it in and out of the standing trees that are there and putting it under compression. The whole thing is holding that down is the compression and the pressure of the X. If you grab the end of that tree and shook that limb, it'd probably do the Wile E. Coyote thing and shoot you across the roadway. Because it's like a trap. I was like, man, I could put a noose here and something step in this shit, and I got it captured because there's nothing holding it down. It's just the compression of the X that's in the middle of it, holding it in place in an arch. Really cool spot.
Wow.
But anyways, I spotted that piece, and I'm like, well, I haven't had any activity. I got one pop the day before, and they just do that to let me know, well, we're here, but we're probably not going to see you. We got our own thing to do, because they got to forage. They're big creatures. They got to eat, and the time they take, for me, I feel real special, especially if it's 45 minutes or an hour and a half, because that's taken away from their foraging time. So I decided, I'm going to go back to camp, stoke the fire up and stuff. So I can't whistle with my mouth. I never could do that. So I used my fingers, and I let out this really big whistle. And when I did that, seconds later, I heard one of the pops. It came from just over the top of the hill towards where the tracks were. But, just kind of crested over the hillside. I could tell, that it was lower down. And I went, oh, okay. So I hollered out, hello! And then, headed back to camp. So I walked back to camp. My van's parked close to where I had my campfire. And it's like 20 feet to the trees behind where I was, and everything else around me was tall timber. The picture that I sent you of me, that was from that spot, and that was from that time right there.
Okay.
That was that day. That's only been about 6 weeks ago. That was the day after the storm rolled through.
Wow.
I was up there camping on top. And so you got me in the campfire right there. And I'm sitting there, and I go over, I stoke the fire and get it all up and ready and everything. And I started cleaning up the whole area because the previous people that camped up there just left stuff strewn everywhere. So, and that's one of my things. I'm up there, I clean up. That's a respect thing for them, and they actually recognize that. And I'll get back to the camp, the transient at the spring here in a minute after this. But I'm sitting there, and I'm going to relax against the back of the van. And I look over, and I see a tree shake, a bush. And I hear, hi. It sounded like the voice of a young boy. It was JJ, the first time he ever vocalized to me. And he said, hi. And I imagine he was probably cloaked, because I didn't see him. But I can't dismiss that I heard him say hi. And that was it. So I'm hi back. And I said, I'll hang here for a while and see what happens. But, like I said, they get into busy foraging, so they don't always have time for me. So, but he came, let me know that they're there, which I thought was absolutely cool. But at the pond, verbally, of course, like I said, I'm out there in the woods talking to myself. I'm the nutcase walking around the woods talking to myself. I told him I'll clean this up. Next time I'm out here, I'll clean up this mess, and if you guys want, that transient is like up the road here, camped out somewhere else. Why don't you go scare the hell out of them? Mm-hmm. Don't hurt them or anything, but, kind of scare the hell out of them. Maybe teach them a lesson a little bit for leaving messes like this, because this is the only water source within miles. This is the place for those animals to come and drink. And for somebody destroying and leaving such a disaster was just beyond me. So the next time I came up there, I brought a rake, I brought bags and everything with every intention. Well, Barry had been there by that time, and must have happened just before I got there. There was fresh scat, and I mean fresh, and he had sprayed everything. And oh my God, I just wanted to hurl. This is just the worst, musky, nasty, And you can smell a bear in the woods. And when you smell a bear, their spray smells the same way, and it's the heaviest, nastiest, musky, kind of rotten, garbage kind of smell you ever smelled. And when it's fresh in your face, it'll make you hurl. So I'm doing all I can do to keep from doing that. And I started cleaning up all that stuff, and I got it all cleaned up. I had to go up in the woods because the bear drug a bunch of stuff up that hadn't been done that way before. The bear hadn't done any of that. And I could tell the bear had been there because of the teeth marks and the fresh scat. And he'd probably just left and probably heard me coming. Actually, it was probably that close in time that he heard me coming up the road and exited the area because everything was that fresh. But I choked myself to everything in the bags. As I was tying the last bag from 4 different areas, I could hear sticks tapping together like they were clapping for me, but using sticks to do it. And that was just the coolest thing in the world to happen. I'm like, am I supposed to take a bow? You're welcome, because I promised him I would do it, and I showed him that I would do it. So I think that gained a lot of trust, and I think anybody can do the same thing, and have the contacts that I'm having. If you've had more than a accidental road crossing, that they've actually come to you to kind of get to know you, there's a reason for it. They will snap a branch, or do the mouth pop. And it's not to scare you or anything, but it's to let you know they're there. Simply start talking to them. That's all you got to do. Start talking to them. Act like they're an old friend. Hi, how you doing? I'm okay with you. I'm not here to hurt you. I would love to see you, and see what happens. It worked perfect for my partner that I'm teaching at work the first time. He had a large white Sasquatch step out in front of the trees and doing the little teeter thing and, basically saying hello because he asked him to. I said, it's that simple. So if you've made a connection with him, that's the way to start. And that's what we call armchair squatching.
It's such a fascinating story. Just your whole story. You look at the whole thing starting way, way back when you were 16.
I was terrified.
The whole thing is just really cool.
And I completely turned around and completely changed. And now I'm spending time with them. And each time is longer and longer. The first time was 45 minutes. And the second time was an hour and a half. And yes, folks, I crossed the road to the woo camp. I was flesh and blood, solid. I've never seen any weirdness happen. None of this stuff has ever happened. You people are crazy. The more time you spend with them, the more stuff they allow you to see. And just go with it. It's okay. You'll figure it out later, but it's the coolest thing in the world. It really is. It is amazing. And it's just going to get better and better.
Thank you for sharing your story, Bill. It's very, very cool. Definitely. A lot of listeners need to realize that a lot of these interviews, a lot of them take a long time to set up and to wait for them to happen. So there's a lot of work that goes into it for sure, but it was worth it waiting to talk to you, Bill. How can people keep up to date with what's going on with you, or can they contact you if they have encounters to report in Oregon? Or
the easiest way to find me is on Facebook.
Okay, cool.
I've pretty much kept a low profile until now, and pretty much only the researchers knew who I was. Ken Gerhardt's like my little brother, Alex, Doug Hychek, they all know who I am. Everybody knows. Adam Davies sent me an invite he was somewhere up in the Arctic somewhere. And when Adam sent me an invite, to be on his friends list, Adam, Gwen, all of them, the She Squatchers, they're all good friends. And they've known about a lot of my stuff, but I've kept a low profile because I didn't want to be public about things. But now it's kind of my clan they're kind of pushing me. They want me to put their story out there because they want people to know that they're not some big, scary creature. So the easiest way, because I was a horse trainer for 20 years and I was everything completely natural horsemanship all the way, no force, no nothing. And I had amazing results. What killed my business was the economy. With the first crash, when the housing market, everything went down, my hay bales went from $2 a piece to $18.50. Gas went over. That was the first time it shot over $4 a gallon, and I had to give everything up. I gave away $500,000 worth of horses. Absolutely gave them away. And so you can find me under Mustanger Bill. That's the easiest way to put in your search. It'll come up. You'll see me, and I'm in Willow Creek with one of the famous Bigfoot statues in Willow Creek. I went there for my birthday this year, because I'd never been there. I was unfortunately, I was very disappointed in how everything has degraded. It's still savable. If some entrepreneur went in and said, hey, we're going to put the money out. Let's fix this. We can stabilize all the wood carvings because that can all still be fixed. I'm a carpenter, so I know that can be fixed. And fix these places up, because that's what put that place on the map was Sasquatch. No ifs, ands, or buts. The only thing that's in good shape there is the hardware store. The painting on the hardware store with all the Bigfoots working with the natives and everything. That beautiful, iconic piece is pristine. It looks wonderful. They've done a great job. I went into the hardware store to check it out, and there's no Bigfoot stuff in here, but it's all on the outside. Pretty cool. It's on a really steep little hill to get up into there too. But I went and checked everything out. Unfortunately, the bookstore, which I understand Steven's moving out of there, but I think a stiff one would probably blow it to the ground. Just a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, I couldn't go out to Bluff Creek itself because there was a big sinkhole that happened at the time, just happened probably days before I got there. And so they had the road kind of blocked off. So I didn't make it out there. One of my next trips, because I have other people that are out there right now that are there at Bluff Creek, and they're camping right now at this moment. And it was some of the researchers I was just with, and which I love Beachfoot. You got to come, Jeremiah. Absolutely. You got to come. Come do interviews with all of us.
I've had an invite for a few years. And so
get a hold of Todd and say, I want to go. Get your butt there.
Bill, hold on. I'm going to talk to the listener for a second.
Okay.
Listener, here's the thing. I have these invites to go to places like Beachfoot, but I can't because, hey, 9 to 5, right? The cool thing is that, there's the goal of going full time with Bigfoot Society. I'm 39% of the way there.
Yeah, I saw that. So, congratulations.
Thank you, listeners. If you want to jump on the train and help me get there, this gets me to places like Beachfoot where I can interview people in person, and like it could happen someday.
And he can write it off, because it is part of the show. That's what makes it happen, Jeremiah. That's what makes it happen.
But someday I will get out there because I have to meet Kip. So
he's so elusive. He's the most elusive cryptid there is on the planet. Like I said, I've seen 8 Sasquatches.
0 Kips.
Now I finally got 1 Kip, and I actually have a photograph to prove it.
Bill, it's been so much fun chatting with you.
Mustanger Bill. That's where you can find me on Facebook. I've opened up. I have 400 fans now on there. That's just from the book. And matter of fact, people started recognizing me a couple of years ago at Squatch Fest. I was with Ken Gerhard, and Ken kind of looked at me like, because I was taken away from his glory at the time. We recognize you. I went, you do? From what? I forgot I was even in the book. I went, from Face to Face. Oh, okay. Okay, this is what an amazing story. I said, well, things have changed.
I'll have to check that book out.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, but...
All right, well, it was great. I'm glad we finally got to catch up.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll have me again sometime, and we'll talk about a little more of what's been going on in my area.
You got it. Well, Bill, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And
hey, we made it to almost 3 hours, 2:44.
Hey, well, this is honestly a record, and it'll probably be a 2-part episode. But thanks so much, Bill.
All right, Jeremiah. Have a great day.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. All right, I'm going to use this space this week to announce that I'll be at the Sasquatch Summerfest in Oak Ridge, Oregon as an attender. I won't be presenting or anything, but I'll be hanging out, trying to interview people that have had Bigfoot encounters. If you're from the Oak Ridge, Oregon area or surrounding and you've had a Bigfoot experience, please contact me directly, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Also, Priscilla was nice enough that if you get your tickets through SasquatchSummerfest.com and use code Bigfoot Society, you can get 50% off the cost of your tickets, which is a big amount. So code Bigfoot Society to get 50% off your tickets, SasquatchSummerfest.com, and helps out the podcast as well. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Please let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.